Welcome to Open Tables. With your hosts, Cynthia Sue Larson.
But it's okay for everybody to change. It's okay to let things go. And that's really powerful.
Christopher Anatra.
The universe is based on commerce. You know me as the quantum businessman.
Jerry Hicks.
I feel like I've woken up in a parallel dimension where everybody's exactly the same. They look the same memories generally speaking, but they're different.
And Shane Robinson.
Nobody has all the answers, so everybody's welcome to share their ideas, and it really expands our consciousness when we do that.
Open Tables. Unique perspectives for a new view of reality.
Jerry, you're muted.
Noted. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. The mute button tends to get a little stuck sometimes. I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. Welcome to IMEC Open Tables for July 2022. It is a pleasure to have every last one of you guys here. And before we get this party started, we got to run through a little bit of legal stuff. But we're going to bring the team on first. We've got... Yeah, sorry, I just screwballed that. We're going to bring the team on first, and we've got our Vice President, Cynthia Sue Larson, waiting in the wings. They're glad to see you, Cynthia. Our Secretary, Shane Robinson, waiting in the wings. Hey, Shane.
Hello, everyone.
And Chris Anatra, also known as the Quantum Businessman.
Hi, everybody.
Sorry, guys, I'm a little rusty at this. It's been a little while.
No problem. Good to have you guys back. Good for all of us to be here. This feels so good.
Cool.
I am so glad to see you guys. It's been a while since we've been all together, so it's a pleasure to have everybody here. But we've got a lot of information to go through today, folks, so we will get to our personal shares here in just a little bit. But let's go ahead and pull up there we go, the Mandela Effect. Science is the name of this episode, Season 2, Episode 7. I can't believe we made it this far, guys. We are really doing this. But before we get into the fun stuff of this episode, like I was saying a moment ago, we've got to go through a little bit of legal stuff. Thank you. The content you are about to watch is meant for thought and consideration. Please be respectful of each other and opinions shared. This is a safe space to express thoughts, ideas, and information. Please note that no copyright infringement is intended with regard to inclusion of short excerpts of material that are included in accordance with fair use under Section 107 of the Copyright Act. All right, with that said, folks, you guys ready to have some fun?
All set.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. So let's get into our sponsors for this episode. Of course, you guys know we have a couple sponsors that we start to show off with. Oh, I forgot about our show agenda. That's funny because I'm the one that made the slideshow this time, and I totally forgot what was in it. Can you tell I'm a little nervous, folks? This episode's sponsors, of course, we're going to go through. Then we're going to have updates from Cynthia, Chris, Shane, and, of course, myself. We're going to speak about the Golden Mandy polls, folks. The Golden Mandys are back, and we need your help to decide who's going to get them. We'll get to that in a little bit. Vice Motherboard has wrote an article about the Mandela Effect in CERN, and it had some surprises in there you guys are going to really enjoy. Next up, we're going to speak of a Mandela Effect study done by the University of Chicago. Huge surprises once again. Then a quantum pseudo-telepathy experiment that explains some really, really amazing information. Then we're going to touch on the square cloud phenomenon, the white sun, and then Mandela Effect theory number 5. As you guys know, we've covered 4 of these so far on the IMEC Open Tables. We're going to cover number 5, CERN, the LHS ME theory. a huge one going around nowadays with CERN starting up earlier at the beginning of this month. It's really been huge talk in the community. And then we're going to finish out with Mandela Effect theory number 6, the timeline insertion theory. If you guys watch the conference from 2019 or happen to be there in person, you're going to recognize this, I'm sure. And we got a lot of fun little surprises along the way, guys. So lots of fun today. I cannot wait to get into this fully jam-packed, important episode about Mandela Effect science. And guys, I promise there's surprises in here you're going to love. I know I was mind-boggled by what we found. What's up, guys? How we doing today, real quick? Cynthia, Shane, Chris, how's everybody?
Doing great. Yeah.
Yep, doing good.
Yeah, appreciating the sun and all the downloads we're getting. Doing well. Man,
has it been incredibly hot where you guys are?
Not so much here on the coast. So we're getting our usual fog. It's typical weather for the summer. Highs in 65. Maybe if we get to 70, it's a hot day for us.
Wow, I wish that was a hot day for us, let me tell you. It's been 98, 99 with like a 69% humidity and a 70% dew point, or 70-degree dew point. It's been insane.
Yeah, we've been up over 100 here in Tulsa almost every day. Heat index around 111, stuff like that. So yeah, we're roasting hot here too.
We've been in the 90s here in Connecticut, and it was kind of cool. Somebody that works for me took the day off, and they went to the beach, and they took a picture of a cloud bow, and it was beautiful. And they said it was in the sky for at least an hour. So that's always cool when you see that type of weather phenomena, a beautiful rainbow coming out of a cloud.
Well, one thing about summertime is all the amazing little creatures that come out in the summer, right? Which brings us to our first sponsor of the evening, folks. The large tortoise caterpillar / butterfly. This is a very elusive butterfly, officially extinct in Britain for more than half a century. But not anymore. They've been discovered in a rewilded area. Now, what is rewilding? Anybody know what rewilding is?
I think that's just returning the land toward to being more like it was before it was cultivated.
That's what I would think too.
Prior to cultivation.
It's exactly what it is. They're basically putting it back to nature in the shortest form. Since 2019, apparently small numbers of these butterflies have been found breeding at Portland on the Dorset coast. So not Portland, Oregon, Portland, England, folks. Adults identified alongside egg cases and webbing that are produced by the caterpillars that produce these. So this is something we're seeing once again. We've seen this a lot. This is my favorite mandanimal, not this one in particular, but my favorite series, the Lazarus creatures. These creatures that are coming back from extinction. We've been following this for quite a while, right?
Absolutely. And I love the quote you've got here on the slide. I think it's the best quote I've ever seen on this topic from a scientist. The quote that you've got at the bottom from.
So Isabella Tree, who began rewilding the area with her husband, said, quote, "We always think we've got to intervene and bring things back, but again and again, we see that it's just about habitat and providing the space for nature, and many species can come back on their own."
And here's where I want to say, trust the nature. Never mind trust the science. Trust the nature.
I think you can trust the science we'll be putting forward today, at least. But yes, absolutely. And this goes to show that the Mandela effect could very well be a naturally occurring phenomenon with, for instance, these Lazarus animals naturally coming back into the habitat, nature naturally pulling them back into reality.
And this is something that's been proposed for quantum jumps in terms of evolutionary leaps, where it's like the missing, the missing evolutionary gap, or it's like there's a hole. Like, where did this happen? There's not like a smooth progression. Evolution goes in jumps and it just leaps. So like from one completely different version of an animal to another. And to me, coming back out of extinction is another similar kind of a leap, quantum jump kind of a thing.
Well, there is the argument that we have slid into a timeline where this is, and it wasn't in our previous one.
this is the these are different ways of saying the same thing. It's basically call it like, okay, we've got this. What's causing it? It's always coming down to that with these Mandela Effect theories, these quantum physics theories.
But I love the colors of this thing. It's such a gorgeous butterfly. And the butterfly wings, guys, keep that in mind. That'll be important here in just a little bit. But again, it's amazing to me that we have this series of Lazarus creatures. We actually did, a whole video on these last year, right? When we did all the different man-animal creatures. I think we had a Lazarus video that had all the different creatures over the year that we'd found that had come back. And the number was pretty high, actually. It really blows my mind. I've been tracking this for 3 or 4 years now. And I've noticed an exorbitant amount of creatures that have come back into reality for whatever reason.
Yeah, very true.
And then you have creatures that are just showing up in reality altogether that nobody remembers, like our next sponsor for today, the maned wolf. So I'm sure some of you guys have heard of a maned wolf. I've heard of the species of maned wolf, but not quite like this. It looks like somebody has mixed up the DNA of a deer and a fox, and it does look a lot more like a fox, right? The scientific name, which I'm not even going to pretend to try to pronounce, suggests that it rests in a class of its own. So it's not actually a different or a class of canid that it falls in of well-known canids of any type or wolf. It's not even a wolf by definition. It's its own class. They can weigh up to 70 pounds, sport a thick red coat like a fox, their legs long and black like dirt, and they feature tall ears that literally stand up on their head. The Smithsonian, we can all say what we like about that place, says these majestic creatures can grow up to 3 feet long and survive in savanna-like areas. Is this new to you guys?
Yeah, I started seeing it just, I think, recently, in recent months. And when I first saw it, I was like, wow. But I didn't get a chance to do anything with it. And then 2 different people both emailed me separately about this. And so it's been wanting to be on the show for at least a month or so. But it's new to me. I haven't, maybe I saw it within the last year, but I had not heard of it before that.
Yeah, and there's something about that too I can add, and this is really interesting, is that the Smithsonian Zoo, I was reading an article, I don't know where the Smithsonian Zoo is, has had maned wolves for 30 years in their zoo. So in this timeline, they've been around for a while, obviously they've been in that zoo. So I find that to be very fascinating, especially like for us that have never seen an animal quite like this on the timeline. And when you look at its legs too, like it makes it more unique. When you look at the darkness of its legs, it's almost like it's walking on stilts when I was first looking at it. So it's a very unusual wolf. It's something that you think you'd remember. So, and they've been around for 30 years. So at least in that particular zoo. So there you go.
That's incredible. If you look at some of the pictures, and I haven't seen a video, so I don't know, but I'm only going by the pictures I've seen, it almost looks like it's like prancing when it walks. But we have a lot of these creatures that are literally showing up on the timeline like the maned wolf. And it's got that golden color to it too. That reddish gold, like, you see what I mean? So again, we've got our golden timeline, ladies and gentlemen.
I think that's a good observation. That gold color is definitely, like, it seems like it indicates prosperity, coming time of just being able to be spontaneous, to thrive, even when it seems like there's no way this could happen. It just, it's kind of like when Chris says can't be, but somehow is. It's like, it's that kind of a creature. It's not really a wolf, but it's beautiful. And the feeling I get is really positive, especially with as you said, the coloration, the way it moves, the legs, the gold, just everything. It looks like if someone designed an imaginary creature, this would be a winner. It's like, this is awesome.
I fully agree. Ruth Maya says, I believe the Smithsonian Zoo is the Washington, D.C. Zoo.
Makes sense.
So if you are willing to travel to Washington, D.C., you're braver than me, and you can go to the Washington Zoo. On to our next sponsor real quick. I told you the butterfly wings would be important, and I was not kidding, folks. Have you ever heard of a praying mantis having butterfly wings?
This is totally new to me.
I'm shocked every time I look at this picture. I'm like, well, is that one of my kids' toys on a leaf or something? What is that? You know?
Right?
Wow.
And if you go into Google and you do the image search, there's a ton of different varieties of colorations on these things. This isn't just a once-off picture. There is a lot of these.
I remember more like these kind of like grasshopper kind of colored wings. You know, it's like just plain. It would match the creature. So usually green if they had wings, and not this butterfly effect.
Yeah, and if I could take the like the audience in like in a little bit of another direction for this, this came into my reality as well around the same time as a comet I was reading into. So when I say a comet I was reading into, one of the things I do is I have the ability to like look at different things and get information back. And things like comets is something that one of the things I'm interested in. And I feel like comets are more than just a ball of ice and dust, right? I think that they're actually, a lot of times they're ships, if you can believe it, in this particular holographic universe that are cloaked for us to think they're a comet. And I was reading into it, and this particular comet, which is Comet C 2017 K2 Pan-STARRS, huge comet discovered in 2017 coming out of the Oort cloud. Basically, it had its approach to Earth maybe a week or so ago, and I was reading into it, and one of the things I do is like, okay, how many species are on board? Okay, one species on board. What are they? They're one of the founder races. What kind of species? And I was going through all the different species, and I'm like, insectoid? And then I went to praying mantis, and it's like, yep, they're praying mantis, highly telepathic, filled with love. They want to communicate. They want to trade with you. So I know what I'm saying sounds kind of like way out there, but it coincided with the praying mantises here with the butterfly wings. So I just wanted to provide that as a possibility for people to think about, to expand their consciousness. So it just something that just all these things just click, click, click came for me as well. And you might wonder, how do you communicate with them? Well, they're very telepathic just by thinking about them, and they can do what I call trading with you. And they'll have certain abilities. They have heart expansion abilities, telepathic abilities, that you might have something that they want. So it's interesting how these things work in the hologram. So I just wanted to point that out.
That is super cool. I love how you demonstrate through your example, Chris, just listening deeper and finding these connections. And then we get to enjoy these kind of synchronicities, which show this kind of entanglement that lies deep within, everything under space-time itself.
Yeah, and like I'm like a business guy. Like I could be silent. I don't have to talk about these things, but it's like, let me share what I've learned, and if it resonates with anyone, great. I just want to share all this information that's coming to me, because I don't think it's just going to be me. I think other people are going to start to get like telepathic hits and consciousness expansion and ideas and something called knowingness that just flows into their heart to understand what's going on.
Yes.
And just like all praying mantises have this ability, all of us have that ability. You know what I mean? It's just like a matter of, getting there and taking the time,
Absolutely. I fully agree, Shane. It's amazing to me how many of us are learning our abilities now, how many of us are really coming into figuring out what we can do, that we have, for like a better term, psychic abilities or different gifts from universe, I guess you would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually ties in with the Mandela Effect about the Grand Central Station. When I meditated on that, sat with that for a while, it was like the Grand Central Terminal, like we're all like connected to the Grand Central Terminal or source, and we can go within for those answers, right? So we're all connected. We can all hack the system, if you will, just from our own intuition and going within, but we're always being distracted by the external things. And that's sort of the trick, right? More on that when I
Wow. Right. Wow. I'd never thought about it like that, but you're right. We're like branches off of source. We're all connected
Yeah.
at the end to the one source.
Yeah.
I love that, Shane. That is
Thank
absolutely
you.
awesome. What else I love is these nature sponsors that we have. Like the next one up on our list.
Oh, yeah.
Late leaf oak, late loaf oak. Okay, if my words would come out correctly, we'd be doing okay. Late leaf oak. Cynthia, tell us about this one.
Well, now we've got another Lazarus species, this time from the plant kingdom. And so it's not just animals that come back from extinction. Sometimes plants do too. And we've covered a few of those on previous shows. This one was found within Texas Big Bend National Park. And I'm not sure I can pronounce its actual name, Quercus tardifolium, but this is also known as late leaf oak, and they found it just this year. So this is a fresh discovery. May 25th, they found it at the Texas Big Bend National Park, and it's hard to tell from the picture, but it does stand 30 feet tall. So it's not like it was hiding as a tiny little sapling or something. It was actually fully grown, and trees don't usually sprout legs and run around. So the fact that it had been considered extinct, usually that means scientists have combed the area. They've looked extensively for any trace of a certain species. When they can't find it, then that's when they declare, okay, it's been gone. And now it's only been gone 10 years, and suddenly it's back. And this reminds me of what that biologist said about the butterfly that came back. It's like we used to think we had to do a whole lot, like jump through flaming hoops, basically, to bring these extinct species back. Now they realize that's not necessary. Like if you build the space or prepare the area, they will come. So,
just let nature run its course.
Yes, trust nature.
Now, this is incredible. How do you miss a 30-foot tall tree? Right. Like you said, I could understand if it's a sapling. I could understand if it's just this little bitty, you could step over, how do you miss a 30-foot tall tree?
You got me. Yeah. So that's why it's here. It's totally a Mandela effect. It qualifies. And I like the fact that it was just gone, looks like 10 years. I hope more of these come back. I think there's a reason when these plants and animals are coming back, they're giving us a sign that it's a very strong sign, that we're in a very important time, very important age on the planet right now. And
I'd also like to point out, and it may just very well be this particular picture, but yet again, we've got the golden color.
You are right. It's staring right at us. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. You're right.
A lot of these Lazarus creatures and animals seem to be coming with this gold attachment to them.
They do. Kind of like, do you notice? Have you noticed? Golden timeline is here.
Maybe God's just slowly sending the golden animals down. You know what I mean? They said the streets are paved with gold in heaven. Perhaps the animals are too. We just go ahead and send them one by one.
Very good.
And there's a lot more animals that we're finding on our timeline that are, well, not what a lot of us remember, or maybe even new, even extinct species that have been gone for quite a while, like the one on our next slide, the elephant bird, folks. The elephant bird.
This one's amazing too. It's not fully back, so if people are saying that's back, not quite. It's just kind of creeping closer. Its point of extinction, I don't remember it having gone extinct 1,000 years ago. And certainly not when humans had been around this species for over 9,000 years. That's why it's here. It's like, this is definitely one to watch. Like we're watching the dodo bird, and I think Chris had mentioned passenger pigeons. And so we're looking at all these. This was the largest bird on Earth. And I'm just noticing, hey, it's like you look away for a minute and then you look back, and now they're saying it was last seen 1,000 years ago. I expect we'll look away, look back, and it was last seen 500 years ago. Like, wait a minute.
And then 200 years, and then last week.
Yeah, it's like sneak. It's like sneaking up on the cookie jar. It's like, we're back. And I think that would be a good thing. The other funny thing about this is on that island in Madagascar where these humans had been living. Only in 2018 have the scientists noticed that humans were there concurrent and living with these giant species, not just of this giant bird, but also a giant tortoise and a giant lemur. And so
they probably thought the things were going to eat them. 10 foot tall and 1,400 pounds. That's a big bird.
But the indigenous people that lived there in the forest of Madagascar, they were keeping to themselves, and they were coexisting peacefully for many, many, many thousands of years. So it wasn't something they just suddenly became frightened of. They lived with these beings for all that time. So there's some kind of story, some kind of mystery here.
I'm wondering if you could put a saddle on it and ride it. That'd be fun. Or not.
I bet you could. I mean, if you develop a good relationship with one.
Yeah, maybe raise it as a chip from a chick.
Yes. So it feels like part of the family.
In India, they take elephants into war. In Madagascar, they take elephant birds into war.
Just a nice forest walk, riding your elephant bird. Sounds like fun.
That does sound like fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, it has that avatar feel to it, doesn't it?
Right? But I would not be surprised once again if this creature did pop back up on the timeline as a Lazarus creature of some type.
Absolutely.
And it might also have a golden color. All right, we'll see when it does show up.
Well, speaking of the dodo, bit of venom in the chat says, waiting for the dodo.
Yes.
So what is the latest on the dodo bird? It's
To the best of our knowledge, it's still extincted it again.
Wait.
Well, things have changed. Chris is tracking it pretty closely.
Yeah, what's happening with the dodo is like there's more and more dodo. Like they found a dodo bird graveyard. See, like back in my old timeline, they just had pictures, like someone painted it. So now they have all these sample bones in one of the museums in England. There's a dodo bird foot, and a preserved head. Like all these things that I never knew of before, and also the date of extinction seems like it's moved up at least 50, maybe even 100 years from when a lot of people remember going extinct. So just with the timelines changing, could we be slowly navigating into a timeline where the dodos never went extinct? I hope so. I really do.
And if people are wondering how on earth this is possible, we'll be talking about this theory, this timeline insertion theory. But also we had Donald Hoffman on this show, and he said space-time is dead. And he's not the only one saying that. So if you say space-time is dead, then it makes sense, obviously. Like these extinct creatures can kind of sneak up, and they can play with time too.
If space-time is dead, then most of the rules are out the window for what is structured in space-time, and the whole thing's up for grabs now. It's absolutely incredible. Speaking of incredible, I think we've all had an incredible month. Cynthia, how has your month been?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll just cut to the chase and bring up the biggest news for me, which has to do with, I got a couple of emails from authors separately. And in both cases, unusually, it reminded me of a book that I'd first written in 2003 called Aura Advantage. And the passage in question that I wanted to include, I thought, well, I'll just go grab that. I'll just directly quote from the book. I'll find where it is. I've got the data files. But strangely, the entire passage was missing, not just from the first edition, but also from the new edition, and also from all of my books entirely. And if you're wondering what on earth was it had to do, it was the one thing that got me in the most trouble. The one thing, when I wrote these books, both times, I would get the most email, the most letters of people agitated, concerned, alarmed, really, because I had mentioned that my salad spoke to me, and that I was having a conversation with my salad before I ate it, and it just completely freaked out certain people. So that offensive paragraph has been completely removed, not by my doing, not going in and re-editing all the outstanding copies of every book that was ever written, but instead simply by vanishing. And this has happened before. And so for this time when it happened, I didn't waste days looking for it like I did when it happened in 2019, getting ready to give my talk at the first conference that we had in Ketchum, Idaho. Because in this case, I was looking for the explanatory paragraph that would explain what's going on with the cover of this book, which is no longer in the book. So there's no point looking for it. I literally spent, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours looking for it, thinking, well, where else would I have put it? And then I ended up just rereading the entire book. It's not in the book. And what that was just the simple paragraph describing about wormholes and how it's possible, and how many physicists, including Leonard Susskind and Raphael Busso at UC Berkeley, Susskind I think is at Stanford, and how they have theorized that the many worlds of quantum physics are one and the same as this relativistic cosmos, this out there big stuff. And so that was the whole thing. It's gone. The paragraph's gone. And I think I shared that in my talk when I couldn't find it. I realized, you know what? This is happening for a reason. This is the perfect audience to tell that this happened. And so now it's happened again. So I've had 2 occurrences now with 2 books. And I think it is happening to show us literally anything, even something you've created can and sometimes does change. And in the case of this Aura Advantage, now I no longer have an offensive passage in the book that was inadvertently upsetting certain vegans and vegetarians, which I never meant to do. My intention was just showing that everything can communicate with us, and that even there can be a sacred relationship with our food, just like the native indigenous peoples always had with theirs.
Absolutely. Everything is, you're muted, by the way, Jerry, but I wanted to chime in anyway, because I was just trying to remember that experiment. I thought it was Clive Baxter. It's Cleve Baxter. So for me, and I had to sort of remember that whole weird spelling of his name, but it's Cleve Baxter. I remembered it as Clive Baxter. So just as I looked it up to remember the name of the experiment, he actually proved, and even follow up, what do you call it? Just follow up. What was it? One show, Mythbusters. Do you remember? They actually repeated that and showed that plants actually do feel our intentions, and even bacteria. So all of these things are alive and conscious to some level, maybe not like us, but they are conscious to some level where you can communicate with them because we all share that same consciousness.
I'm glad you mentioned Cleve Baxter, because I met him in person. I had a photo taken with, I had a photo taken with him, and aura showed up in that regular, it's just a regular photo, and like the auras like I'm writing about, it showed up in the picture around.
Oh, what a cool synchronicity with what we're talking about here, even. I mean,
and, trust the nature. There it is again.
Yeah. But it's proven, it's shown. So we should really thank and give blessings and show love to everything.
Well, I was doing that. I'm not saying what the salad said to me. I'm waiting. I'd love feedback from anyone that remembers this passage. Mm-hmm. And so I'm putting the word out. I'm intentionally leaving a couple things out. Like when you know,
an investigator, right?
Yeah, like missing purse, describe the purse, Yeah. And so I'd love to see what people remember about what the conversation was.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have the book, Aura Advantage, correct?
Yes.
If you have the book and you remember her discussion with the salad, not of the salad, but with the salad, and if you remember what was said in that part, please let her know. Where can they send that information to?
Cynthia at realityshifters.com. But you can send it to all of us at IMEC, that would be fine.
Or team at imec.world, right?
Yeah, because it involves all of us. Yep.
Awesomeness. Next up, I'm going to skip myself and save myself for last. So Shane Robinson, how is your month going, my friend?
Going really good. I did want to chime in. Somebody pointed out that the elephant bird was also golden, and we totally missed it. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate you bringing that up. So my last month has been great. I've been doing a lot of research into sound and frequencies. We actually have a little clip I want to play because I discovered this fractal nature of music and the doubling effect that you get with some of the sounds. And even with my latest research that came after what you're about to listen to, one of the bass tones in it came out to be 86. The number 88 kept coming up synchronistically. And when I tried to tune the bass key of this music to 88, it made the tuning frequency switch to 444, which someone else had mentioned that they tune to that sometimes. So the F key in 444 tuning at the second octave, I guess it would be, or third, is 88 hertz, which also aligns with the other work I'm doing with binaural beats and everything. So if you'd like to hear more about how the song that we're about to play a little clip of was created, I explain the whole process and the fractal nature of the music behind it. It's too long to get into right now, but it is on my channel, Unbiased and on the Fence, here on YouTube. So you can check that out. But let's roll about a minute or so of this. Check it out. So as you hear there, it's long. It's about 13 minutes long, but you can try meditating with it, and that should be good enough of a clip. And yeah, so check it out and see if it helps you reach deeper levels of. And it's going to be even better when I add the binaural beats in there. I have a feeling, so I'm really excited about what that's going to evolve into. And I'm going to add a few other notes people suggested in the comments, which so it'll be a different experience. And it might be not noticeable to the ear that I shift it into 444 hertz tuning, which, let's see, it was JD Peterson. It says, I tune to 432 hertz. And a lot of people in our community do, because it's, when you get people to sound test, most of them prefer 432 over 440, which is currently the standard tuning most people use is 440 hertz. So it will be shifted a little bit. And there's Jackie right there. She was the one that I first heard of tuning to 444 hertz. So a lot of synchronicities. You had actually brought up another one in the comments of that video of another YouTuber that was talking about some of the same numbers and the same fractal nature. And when I said I would return back to that, I realized like we want to bring in balance, right, of the masculine and feminine nature, but we also want to bring in balance of our fractal nature. So as we begin to work within, we'll see the changes outside of us. And that's sort of what the music's all about. As within, so without.
I'm so glad you played a clip because I can feel it. It's too hard to even put it in words.
Thank you so much.
That was gorgeous. I love that beat you got there.
I appreciate it.
That could almost be a product. No, I'm talking from a business point of view. That could almost be a product chain. No, seriously. You can create a series of these, that people can download and utilize in their meditation. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's first rate, high class, wonderful.
Appreciate it.
I think those two guys are working on getting some business stuff started, guys.
I'm behind it 100%. I love it.
Nothing wrong with it. Absolutely. If you're good at something, you can definitely be rewarded by universe. Ain't that right, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And how is your
It's all made out of commerce, right?
Oh, the
universe is commerce.
Yeah, basically trading. It doesn't necessarily mean
energetically,
like,
right?
Yeah, energetic, equal exchange of energy. Exactly. I'll create this for you, and then you reward me, with my creation, type of thing, on an equal basis is what it's all about.
Cliff High speaks a lot about that too. I really like his work. I know a lot of us watch Cliff. Mr. Chris, how's your month been, my friend?
Good. I'm going to say, like, I took a trip. I was went to Spain. Went to the island of Ibiza, got that checked off my bucket list. So I had a really good time. I went there with my friend Sean Bond, and we found this site of, you've probably heard of like a concept of giant trees, like Devil's Tower in the United States. Oh, that's just a rock formation or a volcanic plug. Some people say it's the base of a giant tree. Can't be, but perhaps it was. So we had that kind of an experience. But when it comes to business, what's really interesting is that I'm starting to kind of go through a metamorphosis where it's almost like things are changing from business to bliss-ness, because I feel like in the new energies that are coming through, people are only going to want to do what they love. People are only going to want to do what makes their heart happy and gives them bliss, whether it's Shane creating these 432 megahertz meditations or whatever. I'm sure, Shane, you love doing it. And if you could, if that could be something that helps support you, you'd probably be all for it. So maybe the quantum businessman will turn into the quantum blissness man. And also, too, I want to thank everyone that's listened to my light language. I created a video for, as I mentioned before, like a soul family homing beacon, which sends out a signal from basically your avatar, so that other members of your soul family, not necessarily your DNA family, but your soul family could be part of your DNA family, but usually really important members of your soul family are scattered all around the earth, and it's designed so you can't find them. So I created this light language activation. I speak a very ancient angelic type version that's from Lyra. Got really good reception to that. So now I'm working on other light language activations. The next one I'm working on is for heart expansion. Because a lot of us, we have, things have happened to us in our lives, and we naturally put like blocks around our heart. Or let's say we were in a bad relationship, and the whole concept where, oh my God, they took a piece of my heart. It feels like that person took a piece of my heart. And maybe they literally did, because maybe in another relationship, somebody took a piece of their heart. So they're just trying to restore. So there's this whole concept about like opening your heart and expanding it. And the heart is the most important, or one of the most important parts of your body. Like how your heart beats literally vibrates your body. And they say everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. So working on that. The main part that I'm working on is just talking about the heart and how that interacts, with us and the reality and other people that are around us. Then I get into the activation, and I have other activations I'm working on as well. So yes, I have a lot going, and I'm going really in the direction that my heart is taking me, and people that watch my videos are taking me. So, and it feels really good. It feels really good to do that. So yeah, so thank you. And you can expect more of that from me in the future.
That is wonderful,
That's
Chris.
awesome.
I'm so glad you had a good time on your trips. I love the work you got going on. That is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. If you guys don't know, we do have the radio show over on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, RIPON, RABBITHOLE.com. We do radio Wednesday and Thursday nights. I may actually skip tonight, as it's been a crazy week for me, but we do the radio shows. We are talking about communism over there right now, and doing a compare and contrast to the Bill of Rights. Really interesting stuff we got going on over there. Also, as you guys can see, we have a new den. That's right. We moved into a new den. The other one got a little compromised, so we had to get a new place to go. We are doing well, doing wonderful. New city, new home, new experiences. Absolutely wonderful, folks. And that's about it. It's been a crazy month. I've moved. I've switched jobs. I've done a whole lot in a little amount of time, and it has been absolutely amazing, guys. I'm so glad to be back. I've missed every last one of you guys over in the chat, over in the team here. I've missed all you guys. I sure hate that I've had to take so much time off lately, but now my setup is such that I should be able to get every show. All my radio shows, all the IMEC shows, we should be good to go now. That's about it. It's just been a crazy month, and we're getting back into the radio, getting back into working on a lot of background stuff for IMEC, and just being able to get back to where I was before. And it's absolutely wonderful. So again, so glad to see everybody. So proud to be here. So proud to have IMEC and all you guys on board, and it's amazing, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. Speaking of seeing where things go, Cynthia, without getting too political, I'm going to go around with this question. Are you going to vote this year?
Well, I usually do. So
Shane,
probably.
you going to vote this year?
I can't really answer that.
Chris,
They
you got
got some
this
things they
year?
got to fix until, you know what I mean.
You got to vote, Chris?
I'm not into this political system, so I don't vote.
Well, I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote for the Golden Mandys. That's what I'm going to vote for.
Good lead-in. I like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the polls are open and it is time to vote. Do go cast your vote because I will be casting mine. Make no mistake about that. I don't think mine will count as I'm part of IMEC, but I'll still cast it just the same. We want to know what Mandela Effect shocked you the most in the last year, right? What one just like, oh my God, I can't believe this has happened. Of the ones so far, if you're holding out for the biggest one next time, no, what's one so far, right? Because there's always going to be another one later down the road. We know that. That's for next year.
Then this
Number
is really
two.
nominations is really what's going on here. So if people are thinking that everything's already there, we're the ones nominating. So it's nomination time.
Yep. The community will pick the nominees. The community will pick the winners. This is all community-based. IMEC will just be the one that announces everything you decide. We want to know, guys. We want you to decide what was the biggest ME for you. Next, we want you to decide who deserves the Golden Mandy, who has done their best to move forward the community, to make breakthroughs and put information out there, from money bags to Cynthia to myself, Shane, Eva over at Once Upon a Timeline. There's so many in the community. I can spend all day going through them. Chris, the quantum businessman there. Everybody does their own individual content. We want to know from you guys who deserves the Golden Mandy, guys. Cast your vote online. It's SurveyMonkey. Link in the description box below, I do believe. Link on the screen and link in our chat box here. So please, 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 guys, go vote. It is the year of voting. You ain't got to vote in politics. You can cast your vote for the IMEC Golden Mandy for this year. Last year, Brie Benage, a teenager who gave a TED Talk on the Mandela Effect, won the award. This time, you guys decide who it should go to. Anybody like to add anything in there?
You might get some ideas watching the rest of the show, too. There's going to be some stuff that might, I'm not going to say what, but we'll see.
I love keep plugging the show we're on. Absolutely love it. So I want to go through real quick one more time. Cynthia, are you voting?
I usually do. So that's I just leave it at that.
Shane, are you voting, sir?
I will vote for something.
Chris, are you voting, sir?
Yes, I'm going to vote on the Golden Mannies, and I might choose professional ostrich racing.
Hey, there you go. Professional ostrich race. Okay, now I've got to go back and look at some of these MEs. You just caught me on one that I didn't know about.
It's crazy.
But we won't be covering that in today's episode, folks. And I ask each one of you in the chat, are you going to vote? Are you going to vote for the Golden Mandy? We'd love to see you guys. All right, enough with that. We have had a big month here at IMEC, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody reached out to us about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And it was a journalist for Vice magazine. Turns out Vice was working on an article. They wrote an article.
I think maybe he heard about our poll, our voting that we got going on, and maybe they were wanting to slip in there at the last minute, right?
They want to be the one. Yeah, they want to be the one voted as moving the conversation forward. That's exactly what it was, Shane.
But I love this article. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, not at all. By all means, please chime in, you guys, anytime. Tell me to shut up. It's okay. I can do that. The mute button works. You guys know that. Anyway, seriously, the journalist wrote a really, 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 really amazing article. As Shane said, it was very unbiased and on the fence, if you will. There was not a lot of give or take as far as like pushing one way or the other. They did reach out to us, and they reached out to CERN also because they were interested in CERN and turning on in relation to the Mandela Effect. Now, there are much higher frequency particle collisions happening in our atmosphere all the time, says CERN scientist Clara Nellis. What CERN is doing is tiny in comparison. I can promise you we're not going around changing the labels on your food. So they claim that they are innocent. What do you guys think? You guys think CERN might have something to do with this?
I personally, don't know. I think it's like we officially said. I think it's a valid thing to consider, CERN and all. But I also feel like her explaining what's happening in the atmosphere and what's happening inside the Large Hadron Collider. There, she's only repeating what someone else told her. Like so many people do. And I understand that's what you got to do. But has she really gotten there and taken measurements and she sees what's going on? And I mean, at some level, we're all told things and we just sort of parrot it, right? And so, I mean, I don't think they're changing our food labels, but, and my personal feeling about the whole CERN thing, if anything, is that they're possibly trying to stop what's happening more than moving it forward. So, and that's just my personal, speculation into the whole thing with everything I've seen.
And we'll be talking about this theory on the show today, too. So here we're just discussing the article itself, which seemed remarkable in the sense that it covered both the point of view from Clara Nellist, who's that particle physicist working for the Atlas project at CERN, and also us, and me in particular, because I was sending lengthy emails when I had a chance, usually late at night, because I wanted to respond to someone who seemed like a serious journalist. And I'm really impressed with Mr. Kobler's approach to handling the article and the inclusion of really top-notch research into what's going on that we'll be getting also into in the show today.
Oh, I was totally impressed by the article. Yeah.
And I second that. You guys, I know a lot of people worry when there's an article comes out about Mandela Effect, especially when they start talking about science and CERN. This has got to be one of the most well-written, unbiased articles from a journalist point of view I've ever read, as far as in relation to the subject matter, in relation to everybody covered. And they did reach out to IMEC, and we did give an official statement. Here's IMEC's official statement on CERN. At IMEC, we are very interested in what could be causing this incredible phenomenon. We have looked at a variety of possible causes, including the CERN theory. CERN is just a valid theory as any other at this point, though we cannot officially say for certain that it is the main contributing factor to the Mandela Effect. Cynthia Sue Larson was also quoted separately as saying earliest Mandela effects were happening long before CERN's LHC fired up. So clearly the LHC is not the only factor to consider with the Mandela Effect, and I fully agree with that statement, Cynthia. It is one of many factors that could be playing in. But apparently, it mentioned in the article that we have a bit of a conspiracy theorist in our team here. It seems somebody's just a little on the edge with that. Who could that be? Could that be me? Nah, I don't know. Chris, Chris, why would it be you, my friend?
It's like that old game show, To Tell the Truth, where the person has to stand up. So I'll be the one standing up at the end. Yeah, that would be me. So I just want to say first, the article is really good, especially because of Cynthia, and especially because they used, I think it was your first presentation from IMEC, from Ketchum,
Yes.
Idaho.
Yeah, it was that keynote that Jerry invited me to give the keynote. Jerry invited me to cover this topic. So
you can't even buy publicity like that, right? And if you did, it would be probably so much, and this all just came for us, which is great. It was absolutely amazing. But yeah, so I had, of course, he had to find that one particular video I made, but I made a video about the symbolism of, and I'm sorry if this triggers anyone, but I'm just going to say it, the symbolism of wearing face masks and the concept of, are they there to save lives, or is it symbolic of something else, and specifically slavery? And I think everything in the hologram is symbolic, whether it's the Pope wearing a funny hat or judges wearing black robes, or whatever the case is. People, like, the symbolisms have power. So back in the day, you'd capture a slave, and you got to keep your slave quiet. You got to muzzle them. You got to put a mask over their face. So that particular video went into that, went into some history, went into some other things as well. And of course, I got branded as the praying mantis conspiracy, talking to Comet guy, Akashic records, all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I think it's great though, because it, like, I present, even if you don't agree with it, which is fine, it just presents something in a way that perhaps you've never thought of it before. And everyone can make their own decisions about what means what, here, what symbolisms mean what. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it means a lot, like especially communist China. They're the ones that started with all the face mask stuff in the early 2000s. So, yeah, so I'm the conspiracy guy. So on our panel, just call me, I'll say Christopher Anatra. Get rid of quantum businessman. I'll just say conspiracy guy.
It's a great badge. Wear it proudly.
I will.
I'm kind of jealous. I thought I would be the one that got called the conspiracy guy, right?
You are. I know.
Well, if he looked close enough at all of us, I'm sure he would have said the same thing.
Exactly.
That's fair. But you brought up a point. He looked through he did a lot of research. He had to. He found your videos. He found all of our conference videos from 2019. You could tell that he watched them because of certain references he made throughout the article.
And Moneybag 73 got mentioned favorably, so that was good.
Absolutely. So we are making an impact. We are making a difference. We are putting the word out there, folks. The Mandela Effect is gaining more and more traction every day. And it's getting to the point now that we always said that it would, that is becoming completely undeniable, even to the modern normie.
Yeah.
So
Working on mainstream. We're getting there.
at the end of this article, though, they mentioned another article, a study done by the University of Chicago, a study that proves that, folks, we're not crazy. We know we're not crazy. But now science has taken what is the number one mainstream explanation for the Mandela Effect? Anybody?
You misremembered something.
Misremembered. That is what we hear all the time. But it's not been scientifically routed out that is the case. That's just conjecture on the side of psychologists.
It's also crazy. Like, why would I misremember like dozens of emails of agitated people talking about something that no longer exists? Why?
Or why would everybody misremember something exactly the same?
Right.
Well, the University of Chicago wanted to know. So they did a study. And folks, what they did is incredible. If we could get the slide, please.
You guys are going to love this. Yeah.
My God, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. So, study finds Mandela Effect is real and incredibly difficult to explain. A team of psychologists from University of Chicago, intrigued by the idea of the Mandela Effect, decided to put it to some actual scientific rigor. As well as testing whether there really was an effect, they aimed to discover why visual Mandela effects, further known as VMEs, occur. Why do we see the Curious George that we remember having a tail? Why do we have the black tip on Pikachu? Or why do we remember seeing the cornucopia? Those are just a couple examples. They ran 4 experiments to test the theories being put forward. And let me tell you, folks, the results are nothing less than absolutely amazing. Next slide, please. The first experiment, the participants were asked to, all right, now follow me, guys. Check this out. They were asked to look at images of a logo, character, or mascot, including popular examples of the Mandela Effect and others that had been added as controls. Okay, I put that over a little further than I meant to. As the original or real versions of the image, they included several other versions with mistakes in them made to fit the original as much as possible. So they purposely made mistakes on some. They purposely screwed some up, and they had Mandela Effect ones in there also. And they had the way that it actually originally is now, I guess, too. And then they asked to select the image they believe was the original is what they asked the participants. Then they were asked to rate how confident they were that it was correct and estimate the number of times they had seen it. Considered to be potential VMEs if they were consistently chosen by people who were in their confidence was at a high level of the same image selected. Next slide, please. The results for the first experiment, folks, images of C-3PO, Curious George, Fruit of the Loom logo, the Monopoly Man Pikachu, the Volkswagen logo, and Waldo were had not only accuracies below chance, they were also so specific incorrect versions that they were falsely recognized as the original. And I know they're saying falsely recognized. I'm just going to go with their language here. Basically, everybody chose the Mandela Effect version of these images. George with the tail, Monopoly Man with a monocle, Pikachu with the tip, Fruit of the Loom with the cornucopia. In other words, they were chosen overwhelmingly. They were quoted as saying, furthermore, their accuracy is surprisingly low given the reported familiarity and confidence people have with these images. So they consistently and overwhelmingly picked the Mandela affected version of these images, the way we remember them. That was experiment number 1. So before I go further, what do you guys think of this first experiment?
I think the Fruit of a Loom on a plate is hilarious.
I thought that was genius that they think of ways to make a change to the image.
Yeah.
That's equally viable. Like, why not remember that it was on a plate? That is funny.
Yeah, well, that would make, I mean, most people, I didn't even know a cornucopia was called that or what that was called or anything, but I knew it was on my underwear, right?
Right.
My tidy whities growing up definitely had one. So,
Well, I love how they give George 2 different tails here. A big bushy one and the one we remember, right?
Like a squirrel. Like, what is that?
that's funny, yeah.
But people overwhelmingly chose the same ones over and over and over.
Yes.
So they clearly all remembered the exact same thing, although history says, as we know, that it is incorrect. Next slide, please. They went on to do another experiment. The second experiment, they showed participants the correct images and asked them to study them, without explaining that they would be asked to recall the information about the images they saw. So the image as it is today, the Curious George without the tail, the Fruit of the Loom without anything around it, the images as they are today, they were told to study them, and that's all they were told. They weren't told why they were, just, remember these. Next slide, please. Later, they were asked to select between the correct version and the manipulated version. The VME images, the verified visual Mandela effect images, were still consistently chosen over the ones they had literally just studied. Now, I'm going to repeat that because I think that begs worth of repeating. They literally just looked at the way it is today. Then they were asked to, how do you remember these between the correct and the manipulated? And they chose the Mandela effect one every single time.
Yeah, that's super interesting, right? So doesn't this sort of play into the fact that you might notice a Mandela effect 2 years before someone else? Because there seems to be, and I've heard reports of this through emails and things like that, people might be walking through the store, they look over at Febreze, they know it's changed, but for a moment, they saw it how it used to be, and they do a double take, and then they look back at it and like, oh, wait, I thought I swore I saw a double E in the middle of it, like I used to see it, but no. And so people report that, like I went to grab my camera, but it had changed back. And so people experience these flip-flops. So, with our computers, when you go to websites and things like that, it will just kind of load in a cached version of different logos and things like that to save your computer from having to re-download things. And I think something like that happens with our human interface, right? You know what Fruit Loops looks like walking through the store. So you see the new version, but your brain just loads in the old version that you know how it's always been. But then that also explains why people like, when my kids worked at the store, they didn't hardly see any of the grocery store ones like Fruit Loops, because as they walk by the Fruit Loops over and over again, at some point, subconsciously, it seems like their brain says, oh, wait, we need to get rid of that old image and load this in. So that kind of explains the whole dual memory thing a little bit. What do you guys think about that? I mean, this seems to back up that sort of idea of something like that happening.
I think I'd love to see tests done on the auditory side of this too, like we are the champions of the world, song changes and so forth. This is a great start, just focusing on the visual Mandela effect. And I love their designs. The way they set up the design is brilliant. And now we're just looking at the experiment 2 results. They had 4 experiments, and it just gets better and better, as it goes through.
So far, they have failed to disprove the Mandela effect or failed to prove that it is mismemory, which I'm loving. Shane, I'm right there with you on what you just said there, 100%. I've stated that myself before in the past, that perhaps it is because we remember it a certain way. We've got that stuck in our head. We glance over it. we don't think to look closely. Like Jiffy is the one I used. You glance over and you see the colors. You don't think to really look close enough to inspect the label to see that it's different. Oh, it's Jiffy. You grab it, you throw it in your cart, you go on.
Yeah.
You get home and somebody says, it's Jif. No, it isn't. You go to your cabinet and go, oh my God, it was Jiffy when I bought it.
Right.
I thought it was Jiffy, but did you really pay that much attention at the moment?
Yeah.
You know, I think you are 100% spot on with that observation there.
Appreciate it. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I was going to say I've got two things. The first thing is about Pikachu. So I know, like, my two youngest boys, and they don't easily misremember things, you know. So when the kids are remembering that Pikachu had a black tip on the tail, can you say the kids are like confabulating or misremembering? Probably not. Like, a lot of kids are pretty sharp, and they do remember these things, especially about their favorite characters, right?
Right.
And then the other thing I wanted to bring out was another piece to the puzzle with all this is, if you guys remember when we had Tom Campbell on the show,
Yes.
one of the things we asked him about was the I Love Lucy show. And we asked him to fill in the blank, like search back at his memory. Ricky Ricardo comes in, through the door of the apartment. He's mad at Lucy. You know, fill in the blank. Lucy, you've got some blank to do. Well, Tom Campbell immediately said splainin', but that hasn't happened in this timeline. Like, Ricky Ricardo doesn't say that. So what would make Tom Campbell, who is kind of a Mandela Effect denier, say splainin', unless he actually remembered it and he actually was remembering it from another timeline? So the visuals, the logos, what we remember, TV shows, movies, whatever, geography of the earth, all these art, all these things play into it. So this is a great study, and it's a great start to show that this is not just simple misremembering at all.
And just to chime in one thing with the Pikachu, my son actually was drawing Pikachu in art class a few years ago, and he had to hurry and color in the black of the tail right before the class ended. You know, the teacher was telling him to put the stuff up. He's like, I just got to color in the black of the tail real fast. And so he's got that memory note, you know, so that's like his 100%er, that he's got this really specific memory of having to hurry and color the tail in that was never black to begin with. So, you know, how does that, you know, I think a lot of the theories I have there are so superficial. Like, when you really look into the Mandela Effect, none of the popular, you know, things you read on Wikipedia or hear in the news even comes close to explaining this incredible phenomenon, you know?
Well, Shane, you were talking, you and I were just discussing, and we discussing as a group here, the overlooking and not paying as much attention. Well, there's something called schema theory. And this suggests that people fill in the missing information. Now, we're suggesting it in the way of Mandela, you know, not realizing it's changed, but science or psychology says that the change is us filling in this missing information. We are filling in, like the tail on George, the cornucopia in the background of the Fruit of the Loom. It's called schema theory. If we could go to the next slide, please. They actually tested schema theory next. The filling in different information. Turns out this theory falls down with many of the visual Mandela effects, and that's a quote from the article. The participants were asked to select the correct Fruit of the Loom logo, the basically Mandela Effect version, the correct version, and a manipulation. Here's the quote. They could have picked from the correct version of Fruit of the Loom, the Fruit of the Loom with the cornucopia, or the Fruit of the Loom with the plate underneath it. The fact that they chose the cornucopia over the plate when plates are more frequently associated with fruit is evidence against the idea that it's just schema theory explaining it. Of course, if it was just us filling in missing information, oh yeah, plate fruit was on a plate. It's the plate one. That's correct. That's 100%. Nobody, and I mean, well, if they did, they didn't suggest it in the article. Nobody chose the plate or the way that it is currently. They all chose the cornucopia. What about that, folks?
We're just having dazzled, amazed silence here.
Yeah, no, it's great.
All respect for the science.
Well, I'm just thinking of all of the Mandela effects that's like that. One that I like to think of is the Henry VIII painting with a turkey leg. It's like, why would everybody think of a turkey leg? You know, I wouldn't have thought of a turkey leg as a kid. You know, I would have thought of 1,000 other items before a turkey leg would have popped to my radar. So why would we all remember a turkey leg when that's not, you know, that doesn't make sense to me. You know, it's always looked out of place. That's why I kind of remember it. You know, like who holds a turkey leg like that? Well, of course, he never did now, right?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I think now he holds his gloves.
Slide.
Right.
Yeah.
And they look nothing like a turkey leg.
Not at
No.
all.
But I like the way that schema theory was specifically acknowledged, tested.
Yeah.
You know, they actually worked out this way to do these tests and
Mhm.
and then come to this unmistakable conclusion. Like, well, here you've got a plate versus that's the perfect one, the plate versus
Yeah.
the cornucopia.
But they're
Schema-
all
You've
like
also
that,
got-
right?
You've also got the Simpsons, who did the Homer the Simpson doing the turkey leg. I'm Henry VIII. I am, and he's got the turkey leg he's munching on. So again, even they remember it the way we do. Now, how is that possible? Like you said, slide please. How is this possible? The team found no real explanation at all for the consistent selections of the Mandela affected versions of these pictures.
Yeah.
It's like just imagine being a teacher in a class and you give your kids a multiple choice test and it's like they don't study and they're guessing, but they all guess the wrong thing and they're not copying off each other. They're just,
Right.
I mean, that would be if you're the teacher, you might think, are they all copying off one another?
Are they cheating? Like,
And
how
that
did
brings
they
up, and that actually introduces an interesting theory. Like, is there a collective consciousness at some level where we do tap into that oneness consciousness? And so, I mean, it just introduces, but it doesn't really solve the puzzle. It doesn't
Yeah.
answer the question.
And thinking about being a kid, when you're drawing on magazines and putting glasses on people's face, I've never put a monocle on anyone's face. So if I was going to add glasses to the Monopoly man, it would have been glasses or nothing, but not a monocle. I wouldn't have thought of that except for seeing it for so many years, you know, and
Right.
it just kind of being a part of them.
Absolutely. So it looks like they have failed 3 times so far in proving that mismemory is an accurate explanation for Mandela. Again, they have failed 3 times in their rigorously done scientific experiments to try to disprove not only the Mandela effect, but to prove it is mismemory. So far, no good.
They went for round 4.
So they tried one more time. In the 4th experiment, slide, please. There we go. Participants, I know you're doing your best back there, Heather. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
She's awesome.
Heather, our producer, does such an amazing job. I want to go ahead and give her some acknowledgement. She does not get enough for all the work she does behind the scenes. Incredibly done, Heather. Thank you so much. And for those, I know there are those that have been asking me a lot. There are 2 Heathers, folks. The Heather from Rippin' Rabbit Hole is a completely different Heather than the producer here on IMEC. So I did want to clear that up. I've been asked that a number of times by a number of people. The 4th experiment. Now, I like this. I thought of Shane with this one. The participants were asked to draw the logo and characters from memory. Turns out they still produce Curious George with the tail, Pikachu with a black tail, and the Fruit of the Loom logo with a cornucopia. So their memory they were asked to draw, again, they drew the Mandela Effect versions every single time. 4 experiments, ladies and gentlemen, 4 attempts to prove that psychology is right, and it's just mismemory. 4 failures. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mandela Effect is real, and science just helped us back that up.
Honest science, right?
Yeah, real science, not scientism, science. You know the difference, don't you? Scientism makes the facts fit the theory. Science makes the theory fit the facts.
That makes sense. Yeah, one has an agenda, one has an excitement of discovery behind it.
Exactly. See, archaeology is really bad about scientism. If it doesn't match what we say happened, it's not real. It must be fake, or it disappears. One of the 3, you know.
Yeah, they throw out the data points to make the curve work with what they want it to show.
They have a big pile of anomalous artifacts, I think they call it. If it doesn't fit, well, just put it in that closet. We already got our set thing, and this is how it works. So
Look over there.
it must not go here, right?
Yeah, and
And
if
here
I
at
could-
IMEC, we're exploring that.
Absolutely. What's that, Chris?
yeah, if I could just, I forgot what I was going to say.
Happens to all of us. Must be that squirrel tell on Curious George.
Oh, I was going to say, like, just to add to the conversation, like, to me, the Mandela effect is like one of the most important phenomena that should be studied by science, who is silent on the matter, besides telling us that it's, the misremembering. But then it leads to the next question, because if the Mandela effect is true, and these changes are actually happening, and our consciousness is remembering these changes, could there be someone else or some other force or global narrative, however you want to say it, that's suppressing it, that doesn't want us to know the most important thing about our reality? And the Mandela effect exposes it. So you can go down another level with this to be like, why is it being blocked? Why does science just completely disregard it? I mean, articles like this are great. Articles like this should have been out years ago, actually, right? So it's the whole thing about is there a cause? Is there a reason why we're not told the most important thing about our reality? So that's what I wanted to bring out.
Absolutely. But back to the article really quick. Ladies and gentlemen, they have proven the Mandela effect. Go check that article out. University of Chicago.
It's a preprint right now, but you can find it. And the title is The Visual Mandela Effect as Evidence for Shared and Specific False Memories Across People.
And I thought I had the link in here, but it appears I forgot to link that up.
But the link is actually in the article, which we definitely highly recommend you go check
Ice
out the
Motherboard article, yes.
Yeah, and that is linked below in the description.
That is, and that one was written by, the author was Jason Kobler. So it looks like that. And
Thank you, Jason. Awesome
Jason.
job.
Yay, Jason.
Appreciate your unbiased coverage of it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, we appreciate
top heads off to Jason. Absolutely. I am not going to lie. I was a little concerned when we got the original request. But yeah, top heads off. He did a wonderful job. Speaking of a wonderful job, next slide, please. Chris has done a wonderful job at bringing this to our attention, something very incredibly important. Now, this does get a little deep, folks, so bear with us. But Chris, since you brought this to us, I'm going to let you go ahead and take this one, my friend.
Yeah, would you mind reading it? Because the print is a little small for me to read.
No worries, I completely understand. Telepathy experiment suggests that reality doesn't exist. But we've heard this before, right, folks? That like Einstein didn't like this at all. Einstein said, "You're trying to tell me that when I don't look at the moon, it's not there." Well, this latest experiment would suggest that is the case. Using a trick called quantum pseudo-telepathy, the exercise confirms that reality does not exist in a fixed state until it is measured. And measuring could be something as small as looking at it, right? The idea that physical objects can exist in multiple states simultaneously is known as wave-particle duality and has been demonstrated in the well-known double-slit experiment. To illustrate this point, physicists have designed a number of theoretical games in which players have a limited probability of winning as long as they are unable to communicate with one another, but which can be consistently conquered using the quantum pseudo-telepathy theory. Next slide, please. Merman Perez Magic Square game involves, this is the game they're talking about, two hypothetical players. You got Alice and Bob.
We got to go back a couple slides.
We got to go back a slide, yeah. Or maybe one more.
One more. There. Okay, we're good.
All right. Sorry about that. I wasn't watching the screen. I was watching the slide over here on my personal copy. So say Chris and I are playing this game. Each person would fill in every square in a 3x3 grid with either a 1 or a -1. A referee, say Cynthia, would randomly select one of mine and Chris's columns, and if we both have the same number in the square, they win. To prevent me and Chris from fixing the game by agreeing to just write the same number in every square, the rules demand that the number in each of my squares or my rows multiply to give 1, while Chris's rows have to multiply to produce a -1. Most importantly of all, the two players are not allowed to talk to one another. So Chris and I can't converse or discuss anything. We just have to put our numbers in these boxes that mine should equal 1 at the end of the column and his should equal -1. Now, in the real world, The 2-player 9-square grids must differ
Next
in at
slide.
least.
Heather, next slide.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
Must differ in at least 1 square, which means that it is statistically impossible to win more than 8 times in 9 rounds. So you can't win them all. You can almost do it, but you can't win them all. In the quantum realm, however, me and Chris could be able to win every single time. This is because quantum mechanics eliminates the necessity for each square to contain a fixed value. Thus, it can be 1, -1, or anything in between. The entire grid is therefore completely fluid until it is observed and then configured for the round. Even better is each square in, say, Chris's grid can be quantum entangled with the corresponding square in my grid, so that as soon as the value is observed, the other player's collapses into that same value. Slide, please. More specifically, the photons entangled such that polarization of one was intrinsically linked to the orbital angular momentum of the other. Now, I know we just spoke a lot of Greek there. Bear with me. I know. Using these values as surrogates for myself and Chris's numbers, the researchers simulated 1,075,930 rounds of this game. 1,009,610 of these were won.
Which is a pretty high percentage. We crank
Very incredibly high percentage. So this is a new telepathy experiment, quantum pseudo-telepathy experiment that was done. What do you guys think of this experiment?
Well, I like that guaranteed win. It seems like there's a strong advantage to working within this kind of a quantum entanglement system. And we've seen some advantages of quantum rules winning because they have a time deferred effect. They can have they play with time the way we play with telepathy here. So it's like yet another great example of quantum wins every time. So a quantum spaceship captain is going to win against a classical physics spaceship captain if they're having some sort of a battle, because the quantum guy is capable of basically playing with space and time and also having that delayed choice, knowing in advance what's going on. Here we've got a different example. So we're seeing some powerful effects of strong non-locality, and physicists are playing with lots of these different run-throughs of different variations on these games.
So I'm talking off the top of my head right this second. So this game, let's put it in terms of the universe versus CERN. Each player playing the game. When CERN turns its quantum collider on, perhaps that turns it into a all-win scenario, or can manipulate the numbers in such a way that they would win more. Does that make sense?
Well, I'd say nature's going to win every time. God's going to win every time. I would always bet on God, bet on nature first. I think so. I think CERN might have an effect, but will it be a lasting long-term? I don't know. Can they fix the game all the time? I don't think any artificial conscious agent will be capable of fixing the game every time, unless and until they're completely aligned with divine source, with the creator. That's just my perspective, and there's no way to really prove that yet.
Perhaps the losses is where information that is lost and new information comes in.
I'm kind of feeling that there might be some professional gamblers that are like looking into this to try to figure out their odds. Can we use this in the real world? Going to Vegas. So yeah, it's a very interesting study. Observer changes the observed. Absolutely. That's what our reality is all about.
Then it suggests the consciousness of the observer could change it even yet again to another, just not from being observed, but the consciousness itself could have yet another effect on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I observe as levels of consciousness are the top players. And so as you're leveling up, as you're getting closer to that oneness state of mind, that creator state of mind, then you'll have a bigger say in what's happening. As you go up those levels, you need to have more integrity, more love, more, you need to be at a higher level with your principles as well and your ethics. So if people are trying to, that's what I mean, if they're trying to do a short run, and like win by cheating, I don't think that's going to work long term.
That's fair. And some would even suggest that that is the coding of the simulation, right? The quantum theory, the quantum world, that's the underlying coding of whatever simulation we might be living in, if that's the idea that you particularly follow. Next slide, please. People have questioned the simulation being real after a perfect, clear-cut square cloud was seen in the sky. Twitter user by the name of General Glizzy, weird name there, but General Glizzy posted the photo of the astonishing cloud in Memphis, Tennessee. So that's pretty close to me, actually, just a couple hours away. This is not the first time it has happened, though. On the bottom picture, you see a picture from 2014. Where NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman tweeted a photo of a long square cloud that he captured from the International Space Station. Here we go. Square clouds. What in the world? Nature doesn't do 90-degree angles. Is that right, Cynthia?
Well, nature could do anything. So, I mean, it's just, I guess the better question here is, has anyone seen this before? Is this something that we've seen painted into old paintings from the 1500s, the 1400s? I haven't seen this. So
definitely new to me. See, one thing I was always told, yes, nature can do anything, I give you that.
Yes.
But most of the time you don't find right angles, 90-degree angles in nature. Most of the time it's rounded out, curved. You don't find many things that are perfectly square shaped in nature, right? You might find it on a tree or something, but you rarely find square trees, square animals. It's not a right angle type thing in a general sense, right?
Well, wombat feces, to change gears completely, that comes out like these little cubes, and people were looking at these droppings and wondering, what the heck is this? How can these little cube-like droppings have been created? Obviously, it's some kind of animal scat or excrement, but we don't know. How is it possible that it's like these perfect little cubes?
And yet I stand corrected.
I never heard of that. Wombats poop
Yes.
out cubes?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And there's like a
Mandela effect for me. I mean, how did the eggs like square? You can't put a
I
square.
didn't know I was going to bring that up. I didn't know Jerry was going to grill me on it, but it's like, well, it's something I've seen in the last few months. So, yeah.
Really? Okay.
That's what I said. Really?
That's really fascinating. About the square clouds, like there's been at least for myself 2 times in the last year where I've seen not the whole cloud square, but I've seen like a sharp right angle to a cloud like that. And I'm like, that doesn't normally happen. And for me, I've observed it at least twice. And as the conspiracy guy, one of the things I'll mention, and it kind of ties into the next slide we're going to talk about. First of all, what are clouds? We think we know what clouds are. It's water vapor and so forth, and it rains, etc. But could clouds be other things, like disguised or cloaked, for example? And there's this whole concept. One of the things I talk about is about Atlantis. And a lot of the island nations of Atlantis, they were able to survive the cataclysm because they're able to like phase in and out of time, almost like that show Lost, the island that they landed on, and it was able to phase out of time and move locations. So with the clouds, there's the concept that I've heard spoken about the civilization of Lemuria and how they had cloud cities and how they had a cataclysm as well. And that to survive that cataclysm, some of the cloud cities phase in and out of time. So could this be like the base of some kind of a structure? Or could clouds be cloaked ships, for example? There's all kinds of different theories and things to talk about that. But nevertheless, it is rare to see right angles on a cloud, like, art and so forth. I've never seen that in paintings or anything like that.
But now that you're mentioning that there is an old reference to cloaked vehicles in clouds, because at the end of we're now exiting the fourth world, according to the Hopi indigenous people's way of seeing things. And the last time this happened, the last previous times this has happened, they would follow a star by night and a cloud by day. Then it wasn't described, but it's starting to sound like, okay. I was always wondering, how would you know which cloud to follow? Well, you might want to follow the square one.
The big square one in the sky. That makes sense. The one that looks out of place. Follow that one.
Yeah.
Well, I think with the Israelites in the Old Testament, didn't they follow like a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day? So it kind of sounds similar to that. It's weird.
That sounds identical, pretty much. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You're right.
That's what I thought it was the Bible. I thought she was referencing the Israelites.
Right, that's what I thought. I'm like, wait, wow, this is just like that story.
It totally
that's
matches that.
interesting. It could be another one of those parallel stories, like the way some of the Old Testament shows up in the Sumerian text and things like that. Yeah.
Yes.
And JD Peterson does mention Mr. MBB 333. He covers a lot of these type of phenomena also. Someone I watch quite a bit too.
Yeah, me too.
But Chris, you said these clouds, square clouds, remind you of something else, right?
Wombat poop.
The square clouds.
Something that I haven't said already.
Well, you mentioned it a moment ago. Next slide, please. No, it's not wombat poop. You'll probably find a little bit of wombat poop.
I'm sorry. Like
And-
as we were talking, I Googled it and I'm like looking at this. I'm actually looking at cubes of poop and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on in this reality?
Yeah, I actually sent you guys the article there from the Smithsonian, and the title is Wombats Poop Cubes, and scientists finally got to the bottom of it. So,
The bottom of the cube or the bottom of the problem?
a little bit of both.
They can't figure out the Mandela effect. They can figure out cube.
Oh my gosh.
So Jerry, I think you're talking about the cloud cities.
Yeah, I'm totally trying to make a crappy joke here, and it's not working. So,
It ended up being more crappy than you thought.
We're losing it. Okay.
if you can't
I'm
tell,
looking at a
folks, apparently
diagram.
we needed this laugh for a minute.
There's a diagram of how it comes out of the wombat.
Oh my God. I don't think that's a family-friendly, safe diagram. I would suggest not showing that.
Oh my
Heather,
gosh.
do you have the video?
No.
I'm
Oh my
just
gosh.
kidding.
Okay.
Well, I needed a good laugh. I wasn't expecting it. And no matter how scripted we try to make this, universe has its way
We
of
went way
coming
off
on
the
in. And
No, none of us planned this.
No.
I didn't know Jerry was going to ask that. He's like pointing right at me. Cynthia, anything else in nature? Like, well, wombat poop.
If you must know.
oh my
You
goodness.
should be to ask a question when I think I know what I'm talking about.
Well, we have fun going to unexplored areas. That's for sure.
Oh my God,
Definitely
guys!
not. Never mind.
Okay.
I got to tell you something.
Yes.
I just looked up something. It says rare golden wombat born someplace.
A golden wombat.
born at Ballarat Wildlife Park in Australia. So another, like maybe the poop was directing us to another golden animal on the timeline.
Totally
and I'm
could
like,
be.
holy mackerel.
How
golden
old
one.
is this article, Chris?
Let me visit it.
Well, it's new for us.
Well, of course, that's why I'm curious. He's been out since 16, since
March
10.
March 23rd, 2021.
So very brand new.
Interesting.
Somewhat,
Check
yeah.
that
That out.
That's cool. Thank you.
So that might be a preview for next month's sponsors, right?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
It must
Here it
have
is.
went in. They want to be a sponsor.
and it,
You
it
forgot
lines
about
with the equinox too, with why did it come out like a day or two around the equinox when we've noticed these sorts of things, Mandela effects, like kind of pop on the radar. So that's kind of another flag that, oh, we better go look at that. Plus,
You're
it could be
absolutely
golden
right.
bars coming out of that thing. You never know.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Oh, crazy.
Government be in all kind of trouble then. All right. Speaking of trouble, there's been a little bit of trouble in the skies, folks, over the years. As we know, we had the square clouds, and Chris mentioned earlier that it reminds him of another phenomenon. Cloud cities in the sky. Poor Cynthia, they got her crying over there laughing so hard.
Laughing too hard.
I love it. Our audience is actually laughing a lot too. I love it. I'm glad you guys are having a good time. I know I'm having a ball.
I'm having a
not
cube.
a square one.
A cube of a time.
Not going to ask.
I'm sorry, I had.
We saw this, Jerry.
Going off the rails written off by mainstream media. The clouds in the sky, or cities in the sky, the clouds in the sky. Yeah, that's not natural at all. Clouds in the sky. Who'd have thought? The cities in the sky are something called Fata Morgana, according to the mainstream media. We'll get into that here in just a moment. We've got a video explanation of that. The top pic you see here is from 2016. Whereas the one below it is actually from 2015, and both of these were taken in China. Though it does not only happen in China, these happen to be the two of the best pics I could find, and both of them happen to be in that location. Heather, in the back there, if you've got that video ready to load up, it's just a very quick explanation from the mainstream
media.
This video
surfaced out of China, and it looks like their city is floating in the clouds. Of course, we can't verify if the video is real or not, but we have seen things like this before.
We need to actually run it back. It was green for me.
This is a
first.
I think it's the way in the video itself.
Oh, is it?
This video surfaced out of China, and it looks like their city is floating in the clouds. Of course, we can't verify if the video is real or not, but we have seen things like this before. This is a type of superior mirage called a Fata Morgana, where air temperature near the surface is actually cooler than the air above. It can make objects appear like they are stacked on top of each other, or in this case, like a city floating in the clouds. The same phenomenon happens when you're driving in your car on a hot day and you see what appears to be water or something liquid on the road in the distance, or you've heard of people walking through the desert and they see water in the distance, and then once you get closer, it disappears. Light waves travel through the atmosphere from the sun straight to your eye, but they actually travel through the atmosphere at different speeds. A mirage occurs when the temperature on the ground is hotter than the air above. When light travels through the cooler air into that warmer air near the ground, the light is refracted or bent, and what your eye is seeing is not that U-shaped bend, but an illusion.
So don't worry, folks. Even though the city above the city doesn't match the one it's under, pay no attention to that. It's just an illusion.
I mean, okay, we've all been familiar with mirages. I understand that. That's what really Fata Morgana is. It's a mirage. But this city in the sky, I mean, here we go with more cube shapes that are supposedly naturally shaped in the clouds. I've never seen anything like this. And from my professional opinion of working in the special effects field, it looks fake to me. It's short. I'm not saying something like this doesn't happen or other realities don't fade in with this reality, but this particular image to me has a lot of the hallmarks of it being fake. It's short. Something like this, you would imagine there would be at least several, maybe 3 or 4, a handful of people who caught this on tape, maybe dozens, but only a few posted it. And the movement looks simulated to be camera movement by hand, but like added after the fact in post-production. So there's a few things about it that seem fake, but I've seen things with my own eyes that appear to be, you know, phasing stuff in from other realities. So while this might be fake, I do think some things like that could happen. Definitely. What do you guys think?
One of the things that I wanted to mention is that I was watching a show about it, and it was in Chinese, so I saw like the English translation. And the woman that filmed what she was seeing, the cloud city outside of her apartment window, she said it was there for 4 hours. I don't know if she filmed it for I don't know how long she filmed it for, to be honest with you. But in any event, it's very like interesting. This and square clouds, is the matrix glitching? Like, what's going on over here? So it just adds more to the reality, because you'd think if this is a mirage and if this was like something happening there may be other pictures of it in the past. Like, it wouldn't just be happening now, unless we're possibly in a time where the matrix is starting to malfunction. So it's just food for thought. It's just food for like possible consciousness expansion. Like, could it be?
They look like Minecraft clouds, the square ones, because everything's square in Minecraft. Maybe we're just getting digitalized or something. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you this is one of those phenomena that really just trips me out, because the first thing I think is dimensional rift. We're literally seeing another dimension that is set slightly above ours, physically speaking. That's one idea I have. The other, I'm not going to lie. First time I seen this, first thing I thought is the Care Bear City has really gotten advanced since I was a kid. But in all seriousness, yeah, this is something that trips me out, because clouds don't naturally form buildings. I know I've seen bunnies and all kind of crazy things in the clouds, and I'm a cloud watcher myself. I'm a porch sitter. I love watching the clouds. But I don't normally see buildings and landscapes in the clouds. That's just not something that is normal.
I've seen more UFOs than this. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's a good test.
I've lived in cities. I've lived in the country. I've lived in places that probably should have had this happen. If this is a natural, normal phenomenon, why does it only occur every great now and again if it's such a normal thing to happen, right? Especially with heats like we're having this year.
Right.
Well, I feel like even if the video isn't fake, I don't feel like it's a natural phenomena. I feel like it's project, beams that are blue, that sort of thing that
right,
a holographic sort of projection or something, So either way, I think it's fake. But whether it was done in Photoshop or with some kind of technology, I don't feel like this particular footage anyway. Is anything more than some kind of illusion.
They've got great holographic billboards now that look like it's 3D.
Oh, yeah.
They're moving and stuff. And
what China, they can do with drones and everything is amazing.
China has some incredible technology. And they could be playing around with, I don't know what's going on. But if they are playing around with it, maybe that could be another explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and could there actually be cities in clouds? I know that in the Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back, it introduced the concept of Cloud City, where Lando Calrissian was. And so, yeah, is it possible there could, regardless of everything we're talking about, is it possible that there could be some kind of technology that allows a city to be in the clouds, which would be very interesting?
Everything's possible in nature, is what I'd say.
I'm also not opposed to your idea of beams of blue color, Shane. That is a good possibility too. I like the way you stated that. That is something I hadn't thought about, was the holographic side of it. The fact that he could be nothing more than just that, an illusion, just not the Fata Morgana version, a purposeful illusion of sorts, right? Or perhaps it's an illusion from something above it. Next slide, please. The white sun. Now, this is something that's got a lot of chatter. I have heard people talk about this across a variety of different genres, not just Mandela Effect. There are people that are totally not even interested in paranormal that are pointing out how white and hot our sun has gotten. So this is really, really intriguing. I'm going to throw this out to the panel and just let everybody chime in on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right about that. I've been noticing a lot of chatter just on Twitter about people observing that there's more ultraviolet radiation coming through. So one person kept saying repeatedly, it's not the temperature, it's not hotter. It's like you can feel there's a different feeling to the way the sun feels on our bodies now than it did 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So those of us who are old enough to remember decades back, we do remember a softer, gentler, yellowish, more yellow sun. And so one of the theories would be maybe there's just a change in the solar cycle. So the reduction, when you're in a certain strong or weak cycle of the sun, the solar activity cycle, that affects the Earth's magnetosphere, which is all the magnetic fields protecting the Earth. And so it can change. And we might be in that point right now where we would be expecting to receive a lot more ultraviolet radiation. And some of these people that don't really believe in the Mandela effect necessarily, they are wondering what are the UV figures and why doesn't the government show that anymore? It used to show it. Why is that suddenly being concealed?
Oh, is it?
I don't know. I mean, I just saw that this morning before we did the show. I was just wondering, what are they saying right now? Well, that came up.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. So,
see, one thing I remember, not only the fact that I remember the yellow sun, and I'm sure we all remember looking up and seeing the big yellow ball in the sky. When I was a kid, I was kind of into comic books. Superman was a really good comic book. Superman had a special ability. Superman had a lot of special abilities. He had laser eyes. He was able to fly. He had ice breath. But you know why he had all these special abilities? Anybody? Because of the special yellow sun that surrounded the Earth. That's what it says in the original movie and the first comic book. You're going to the Earth. The yellow sun has an effect that's such that you have these abilities because of the yellow sun that we no longer have.
wow.
Somebody dropped some kryptonite on the sun, huh?
There you go. Maybe that's what happened. We shot some krypton into it.
Right.
And wouldn't it be interesting if this white sun does kind of the opposite for what it did to Superman, where we actually start to gain new abilities and we have different DNA activations that start to come online? Because the way I feel is that the sun is constantly sending us upgrade codes. That's why they're so intent on doing the chemtrails in the sky. And who was it? Bill Gates or World Economic Forum have been talking about like blocking out the sun completely, you know, because they're literally afraid of the sun. And like Cynthia was saying, that Earth's magnetic shields are changing, they're weakening, which allows more light in, which is having an effect. And I'll just speak for myself. I don't know about you guys, but like when I went to Spain in Ibiza, I spent a lot of time in the sun, like on a, due to sailing trip and so forth. I didn't get burned at all. And I think there's this concept where even if you do, it's just because you've gotten too much downloads too quickly. Let your body get used to it, and then you have to hold that whole cycle where you don't burn as much. But yeah, I'm not experiencing that at all. And I don't know if anyone else is experiencing more burns, less burns, but besides the sun being so bright, it's hard to see. I'm also seeing like rainbow, especially when the sun starts to get lower in the sky. And I think we spoke about this before, and I think Shane, you even agreed. You can see like,
yeah, I can even see it in this image here. You can see the clouds closest to the sun have a bit of iridescence that is even coming through in this image.
Yeah. So there's definitely the sun. What is the sun? Where are we in this universe? Are we still in the Sagittarius arm? Are we on the Orion spur? Somebody said, I just recently heard we're in the Virgo cluster. I'm like, never heard that before. So yeah, what is going on with reality? It seems like we're changing. The Earth is changing. The sun is changing. The planets appear to be changing as well. So so many magical things going on.
I'm going to put this on its head here. A lot of people say the sun turning white is a Mandela effect.
Right.
But let's flip that. What if the sun turning white is just one of the many causes of the Mandela effect? We've had this theory that energies from space could be affecting shifts. Perhaps it's the other way around. Perhaps it's one of the triggers and not one of the results.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
I love it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because what is the, when people think of the sun, they think of plasma. And, the sun is just this big ball of plasma in the sky. And a lot of the time travel type things you'll hear about, like with Project Pegasus, it all involved plasma. Plasma was always involved in the process. So like, what is plasma? What is the sun? Is time involved? Could timelines be involved? It's all fascinating when you start to put the puzzle pieces together.
And we're getting ready to go into this, but before we go into the next slide, we were discussing as a team, I guess yesterday, maybe today, how a couple years ago, it was last night, a couple years ago, when Atlas turned on, right? Wasn't there something funny that happened there?
Like a storm cloud showed up.
When the Awake experiment got turned on?
It was Awake, not Atlas. It was Awake. You're right.
Yeah. And that was all about plasma. They put plasma in the tunnel for CERN. So that was interesting.
Yeah, they had a crazy plasma sky phenomenon that occurred directly above it when they run this in 2016, right, Chris?
Yeah. Is that our next slide?
No, I was going to touch on. We don't have a slide for that. I was just touching on that just because I think it's kind of important to the conversation since you brought up plasma.
Yeah. So if somebody were to if you were to look up 2016 CERN awake cloud, the images will come up. It's dramatic. It's dramatic. It's like these purple clouds forming a circle with lightning above it. And then it's kind of funny. There's this site called Snopes, which is basically the global narrative's take on what it is. And the global narrative said it was just a storm. Look away, people. Nothing to see here. So yeah, it's all part of these clues. And something about plasma too just came into my reality yesterday. It happened in 1853 in Bar Harbor, Maine. It was called the Purple Fire Snowstorm. And it's an incredible event where all this ball lightning that was purple came into the town of Bar Harbor, including the ports and all the ships. And it, meteorologists, there's so many eyewitness reports that it actually happened. But meteorologists today that's too fantastical. We can't even believe the reports back then. But back then, people believed it. They had testimony about what was happening. And then that event, funny, because that event happened right before the first World's Fair, which there was interesting time travel things you could talk about regarding world fairs and the people coming in from world fairs, and then all these orphans appearing on the timeline, and something else I call later on called the time traveling babies. So all these things related to plasma. So yeah, whether it's plasma and by the way, I think they shut down that awake experiment. I think they did it. They realized oops, maybe we went a little bit too far. I don't know, but I haven't heard of them firing up the awake thing and putting plasma back in the cyclotron anymore. But yeah, it's fascinating images if anyone gets a chance to take a look.
And the other thing you're mentioning is 1853, Bar Harbor. And then to look it up, what else would we look for? Because this is fascinating.
Yeah, Purple Fire Snowstorm.
Purple Fire Snowstorm.
And it was all about ball lightning.
Cool.
Which I believe has a consciousness.
That's really cool. Yeah, I was interested a few years ago in the sun. I thought it was a Mandela effect as well, because you got to think either the sun could be changing colors, our eyes could be changing, it could be something in the atmosphere changing the lensing effect of the light traveling through it. There's so many possibilities of what it could be. And at the time, a lot of information was coming through in different people's hypnosis sessions about the sun or some grand solar flash that would help evolve humanity, upgrade DNA or something along those lines. But if you think about the sun getting brighter or flashing over a few decades, it would look like exactly what we're experiencing here. We wouldn't notice it's flashing because it's so slow. It's like cosmic time. It's fast on the cosmic scale. 20 years ain't much, right? On the cosmic scale.
It's a blip. Small
right.
Blip.
But if we could somehow do a time lapse of our sun rising in the same spot for the last 20 years, I think you would see a noticeable flash if you played it quick enough. You know what I mean? And we'd be in the flash. And it seems to be increasing even. It seems like more now than when I first noticed it in 2017.
And this flash that you mentioned has been referenced other places?
Yeah, just People's BQ8 session. I think Allison Coe was one. There's been a number of
Didn't Dolores mention this once or twice?
Actually, I think Dolores Cannon probably did too. Yeah, I'm not really sure. But yeah, it's been mentioned. It's out there all over the place. It's coming through in some of my own sessions about a flash that will suddenly change people. It comes through in so many ways. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, if you're in a session like that and you're being shown the sun flashing, it doesn't have a long time to show you in your mind. So it's going to show you, hey, the sun's getting brighter. And you're like, I see the sun getting brighter. I see this flash. And, so it shows you stuff the way, and then we sort of add all these interpretations to it that might not have actually been meant to be added to it, because I feel like things are changing and the Mandela effect's happening. And we're seeing evidence of the flash happening at this very moment right now. The fact that we're even together right now, So I think
the plasma could be conscious. It could be, like you suggest. Yeah. I think, Jerry, you're pointing out this could be driving.
And the sun has to be conscious, right? If your salad is conscious, the sun is for sure. It's like the earth, our mothers, the earth, the I guess the mother of the earth would be like the sun, and then you got the central sun. There is this fractal nature, that happens in nature all the way down to ourselves. So I can imagine the sun's affecting us, right? And we know the human does. We know the sun's rays affect us in different ways, right? So it's happening.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. The white sun, once again, very, very, very strange phenomena that we have been tracking for quite a while. Hopefully, it's something we will continue to track and bring information on as possible.
You got some flashing behind you there. I love the synchronicity, and I don't know if you noticed it. You can watch it on the replay, but the white sun just appeared behind you.
You got some cool visual effects, Jerry.
I'm loving it. I'll take that. I don't know why or how, but I'll take it. There we go. Just emphasizes what we're saying there, right? Perhaps CERN has fired up once again and running more experiments. We know CERN fired up July 5th of this year. The whole community has been looking at CERN firing up, and it's been a real topic of discussion, from the Vice Motherboard article to the entire community kind of being more on key about these things. If we could go to our next slide, please. That brings us to our theory number 5 for IMEC Open Tables. We've covered so far the computer simulated reality theory in season 2, episode 2. Personally, one of my favorite episodes. Then again, I am the theory guy, so I might be a little biased there. Parallel universe, multiverse theory. We covered time travel, timelines theory, and the many worlds theory. Next up today, we are going to be covering the CERN LH. I think I meant to put C. I put S for whatever reason, because, Jerry can't type. But the CERN M.E. theory, very popular among the community, very, very popular. Recently run its highest energy experiment so far after taking a 3-year hiatus. Now, I want to say it was something like 13 tera electric volts, which is like insanely huge. Tetra electric volts, excuse me. Tens of thousands of small particle colliders, though, do exist worldwide. CERN isn't the only one. It's just the biggest and most popular. And has there been an increase in Mandela Effect since this has started? So this theory basically states that CERN, because of their high energy particle collisions, could be responsible for changing reality. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this to the panel, and I'm going to step away for just a moment.
Yeah, anybody want to run with this one? We have talked about it, of course, with the article that came out. But now to be the advocate for it, the people who say that this is what's happening, what would they say? They would say that we can expect that there may be retrocausal effects, that just we can't necessarily say just because the Mandela effect happened before CERN started doesn't mean anything necessarily, because we know for a fact that this is a quantum kind of an experimental device and project. Therefore, we could actually see, future decisions having an effect on the past. In other words, Mandela effects coming in before the project even started.
Right, which actually goes to one of your theories you were saying, right? It's like, wow, it's like to think that they could have changed things in the past, and you noticed it back then, from them doing it in the future, sort of that retrocausality, reverberations going backwards. Me personally, I feel like it's kind of like, when you buy a car and then all of a sudden you notice all the other ones just like it. If you know they fired it up and you start looking for Mandela effects, you're going to find them, and it's going to be sort of this false, confirming of the fact that it's the Hadron Collider. I think if you're always looking at the stuff, or maybe look at when they, turn it down, I don't know, there's so much in it to throw off, because it's such a subjective experience, you know what I mean?
Another thing in favor of this theory would be that they're bringing so much energy that, and they are occasionally working with plasma, as we've talked about. So they've got the ingredients, the components to, necessary in order to initiate some of these kinds of Mandela effects we do see. Mm-hmm. So they could definitely be playing a role in it. Again, I'm not usually a supporter of this theory, but I'm doing my best to step in and say, here's what it could be doing.
Well, when you think of that, do you think that they're actually going around and changing our favorite cookie names, or would that be like a byproduct? Like,
Yeah,
they don't realize they're doing it, but they are doing it, right?
what I notice with reality shifts and Mandela effects is that they come through kind of from the subconscious. So usually it's relatively harmless things.
Yeah.
Like I'm not that upset when something goes missing from my book, and I think I'm putting the word out now so everybody can let me know. Has it come back? Is it now in anybody's book? I wouldn't expect it would be. That's the Mandela effect, but it might be because of subjective reality. It might even show back up again.
So you're saying, like, if you remind enough people about that article and they all think about it hard enough and remember it hard enough, it might just pop back into reality, something along those lines?
Yeah, that's here we are, causal agents, and we have this collaborative, co-creative facility. We each experience subjective reality. However, collectively, if we care enough about something, we have the ability to witness extinct animals coming back and see the signs of the golden timeline, all these things. Bring healing for others. When we love someone, we can absolutely engage in just making that kind of a timeline jump.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I could add to this conversation too, I think what got a lot of CERN doesn't want me to talk about this. What got a lot of people like on the CERN bandwagon causing Mandela effects was there was this picture from one of the scientists at CERN, the guy that had like he looked like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. He had a really messy desk and he was holding up these two signs, and one said like number one Bond, and the second one said Mandela. And so when people were like, what does number one Bond mean? It was an actor whose name was Nelson, who played the first James Bond. So the people were putting it together like a scientist at CERN is holding up a cryptic sign that says Mandela Effect. So I think that started to like add to the lore of like, CERN is responsible. And I think that actually there's some Mandela effects that like CERN, like inventing the World Wide Web, things like that. That's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. In some of my videos, I talk about authority to create Mandela effects. It's a type of authority to do that, like on Earth and in her hologram, so to speak. And for a while, CERN had what's called stolen authority, and they actually could create Mandela effects to some extent. But Mandela effects have always been around, like way before this is. So I'm not supporting the CERN theory, but I'm saying that there is something to it. And in one of my videos, I make a link between Stouffer stovetop stuffing, like that change, and CERN and craft, which will seem a little bit out there. But yeah, so I believe that there is something to it. But as far as CERN being the sole cause of Mandela effects, I don't think so. In my opinion.
You mean like a hostile corporate takeover, like Kraft says, "Hey, go back and make Stouffer stovetop stuffing ours," right?
Yeah.
I would expect to see almost any Mandela effect caused by man to have some kind of monetary benefit to it, right? Not just chopping off part of the T of the Walmart logo, right? That's not making anybody any money.
Yeah, it actually has to do with stealing the light from families. So like the whole concept is that what events every year do families usually get together, especially in North America? That's Thanksgiving. Families get together. When families get together, they create a special kind of light just coming together. So if someone wanted to harvest that light with genetically modified foods, and if you look at the ingredient of Stouffer stovetop stuffing, it's pretty gross. Like that's not healthy food. It might taste.
You mean craft stovetop? I can't find Stouffer's anymore.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. Oh, we better just keep it that way. They can't sue us, right? It's like we don't even own it.
Right.
We'll keep it Stouffer's.
Wouldn't that be a good interesting? Wouldn't that be a good lawsuit if Stouffer's sued Kraft?
Right.
Because that would confuse people to no end. Like, wait,
right, but the jury would all be for Stouffer's, right? They'd be like, no, it was definitely Stouffer's.
Exactly.
That would be a good one.
Yeah, I think
we're moving into that next theory, this timeline insertion theory.
Before we jump into that, I would like to play devil's advocate on both Shane and Chris. Though I am not a major proponent of the CERN theory, and I've made no two ways about that in my videos. What I will say is there's something called time smear. And this is the idea that, say, CERN ran an experiment in 3 years from now, but it affected the timeline 20 years ago. You couldn't determine when the start or end of that was. So if they're running experiments that are retrocausally changing reality or creating a time smear, we couldn't necessarily say, well, it was off for 3 years, so it's not responsible for those 3 years worth of effects. That's not necessarily the case if it's a retrocausal experiment of some type.
Yeah, yeah. And I would also say that CERN first came on my radar before the Mandela Effect. I know for a lot of people it came on after, but I was watching a show that a lot of people might remember. It was called Flash Forward. And in that show, like everybody like passes out at the same moment, right? And it was a really cool scene because they showed you the first 15 minutes of it. Everybody everywhere just passes out and hits the ground. And, you know, the clip of that's amazing. But during that few seconds that they were unconscious, they got a flash of a future date. And they all got the same date of where they would be in that future date. And, you know, some people didn't get anything, but they still passed out. And so... Spoiler alert, CERN comes in a little bit later as being a part of that happening. So when the Mandela Effect happened for me, I immediately thought back to that show. I mean, from not hearing anything anyone else said about CERN, CERN came on my radar just from remembering that show, and this global event happened that freaked everybody out, and it was CERN's fault. So of course I'm going to think that now. I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's the CERN thing. So, you know, you got to wonder, was that pre-programming? Because I want to say it was 07, 08 when Flash Forward came out. And to think of when something crazy happens, well, maybe it's this place, you know, it could be more misdirection. You know what I mean?
Which is all very, very.
Did any of you see that show, by the way? Flash
Yeah.
Forward?
That particular one I did not, actually.
Okay. Yeah. It's worth going back and watching. Flash Forward.
I've heard of it, but I didn't have the ability to watch it or time or chance or whatever the case may be.
It's a binger. Yeah, for sure. I had to wait, you know, week by week because I watched it when it first came out on prime time. Yeah.
How old is it?
I want to say 07, 08, something like that, right before the Mandela Effect.
Okay.
Maybe 06. And I remember I'd known about CERN when they brought them up in the show. I'm like, oh, that's that place where they, you know, I didn't know what they were doing, but I definitely heard of it. You know, it wasn't a surprise when they brought them up, is what I'm saying. I'd already followed some of the science news about CERN at that point, too.
So I would definitely agree that there's possibilities still for CERN to be the cause, though we don't have any pointing smoking guns right now. The option is still definitely on the table. It is a very, very popular theory among the community. And our next theory, if I could get the slide one more again, please, Miss Ma'am. Wonderful. Mandela Effect theory number 6, timeline insertion theory. So this goes back to what Shane and Chris were talking about a moment ago with the corporate takeovers and things being slipped into the timeline. This was discussed extensively by Chris Anatra, the quantum businessman, at the 2019 IMEC event in Ketchum, Idaho. This is pretty well Chris's theory right here. He's done a lot of work in putting this together, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw it over to him.
Yeah, so this is a theory, and basically the concept is that if there are multiple timelines running, and you know, let's say hundreds or thousands of different timelines, depending on how they branch off and so forth, is it possible that if you can manipulate the natural order of things that are going on in the hologram or the simulation or however you want to classify this reality, can you pull an event from one timeline and splice it into the current timeline, and then it becomes part of the historical record? So in a recent video I made, one of the newer timeline insertions that came to me was the all-female United States-based terrorist group called M19. So in the 70s and then in the early 80s, these female terrorists were blowing up all these buildings around the country. And the big one was they bombed the Senate in Washington, D.C. In 1983, they bombed the U.S. Senate. Now, a lot of people had they never heard of M19. And then the bombing of the U.S. Senate, like, is that something that people remember? You know, Ronald Reagan was president at the time. It was about a year before the next election in '84, where he actually got reelected. And I had gone through the Reagan Library. I went through all this research I could online, and there's like nothing. There's like no news reports. There's like nothing that talks about this forgotten part of history. So there was someone that wound up discovering this. He wrote a book about it, which is really interesting. And so the M19, they bombed the Senate. They caused $1 million in damage. No one was hurt because they had the bomb go off literally at midnight is when the bomb went off. And then the next thing is, why would this be a timeline insertion? It's definitely appears to be an insertion in the historical record that no one's ever heard of before. But then why would someone that's manipulating things want to insert this particular event? And the way I was reading it, it has to do with grids and grid structures. And a lot of people that are into like spirituality, they talk about grid work, and basically the hologram is constructed on grids, and sometimes grids need to be repaired. Grids can also be broken by explosions. So grids can be broken and then they have to be rebuilt again. So is it possible that this event, was inserted so that the Senate could be broken, the grid that creates the Senate and those structures and, how things operate there? And then who's doing the rebuilding of the grid? So, one thing leads to another, because I always want to know why. So if there's I call it chess move, if there's a chess move in the Earth game, like why did that happen? So an event appears on the historical record that no one remembers, and that's always part of, forgotten history, right? Everyone's forgotten about the 1983 bombing of the Senate, but it's a real event. It actually happened, and it's what I call a timeline insertion, among many other types of things where I see Mandela effects as actually something being inserted into the historical record to have an effect on our reality now, because that's how like the time in these events like literally resonate through time and change people's opinions and so forth. So whatever it is. So there's my quick 2-minute overview of like the concept of timeline insertions.
And I've got something I'd love to ask Chris if you have any thoughts about Philip K. Dick, because he had this amazing similar idea that the Romans and Jesus is still happening. It's kind of like that oppressive kind of a mindset is still present on the planet right in the 1970s. He was seeing it in the form of Richard Nixon's I think I forget which year it was exactly, but anyway, long story short, what are your thoughts about Philip K. Dick? He also seems to have recognized the Mandela effect. Do you think he was onto some of these timeline insertions too?
Yeah, I think he was. And all, Man in the High Castle, that book that he wrote about like the Nazis winning World War II, was that a real timeline? Did things, like, is there another timeline where the Nazis won and we're living in a police state? And like you said, Christians, I think he referred to Christians in a particular timeline as like the freedom fighters.
Yes.
They were fighting, for our freedoms. They're not like pacifists going to church, dropping money in a donation plate or, whatever. They were more proactive. So yeah, all these things definitely, is it just a good storytelling, or is there like more to it than that? Because he was fairly convinced that these things are actually happening, and he was like actually remembering other lives and other timelines. So if that happened to him, I think now with the sun and codes coming in, or however you want to put it, I think like these type of things are going to start happening to people more and more. That's why people are having dual memories too. So that's another explanation for like Mandela effects. A lot of people are like, wait, I remember it both ways. So that's happening more and more as well. So there's something big going on. There definitely is.
Kudos to Philip K. Dick for coming out like that back then, writing about it. I mean, he didn't have the internet. He had to actually put himself out there in book form and have people come to him at his book signings or whatever event it was, and come talk to him and like, I remember that too. And think of how much harder it was and how much easier we have it, that we can just hop online and find a YouTube video right away and find a whole community of people that see these things. So I'm glad he put himself out there like that. And now we're talking about him, 40 years later. So it's amazing.
Yeah, he was tuned in, and he gave that talk in Metz, France. And this is, Chris, you sent me the transcript from that. It's powerful. And I think it's findable on YouTube. People can watch it. And that shows just how much he understood that the Mandela effect is real. And that was, I forget what year that was, but that was clearly one of the first times that was ever discussed.
Yeah.
73 or 78,
Yeah.
something like that.
Sounds right. Yes.
Yeah, and it was
73, I think.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. Weren't some people in the audience laughing at him too? They just thought it was too incredible.
Well, yeah, they were laughing, and his speech got a little bit chopped up, and so finding the original transcript is priceless, because what he ended up saying was truncated based on the problem with the translator. He was speaking in France, but not in French, and so he was speaking in English, and then the translator would talk, and then due to time constraints, quite a bit of the original talk got shortened. But that original document is amazing. It's really
what I find that was really cool about that is there was one point when he's like, and I'm going to go off script for a moment. And that's the popular clip. It's like for a moment, he was like, okay, I need to let higher self come through and say this. And that ends up being the clip that everyone, because he summarized it so beautifully, that we live in this simulated computer reality where we only notice when little things change or something along those lines. But it was pretty quick. And he went off script. That wasn't part of it. And he said that right before that. And I saw a fuller clip where he says he's going off script for a moment. And I'm like, wow, what an amazing thing that he was so in tune that even at that moment, he allowed something extra, even in those circumstances where you got a translator, you need to stick with the script because it's just going to be utterly confusing. He still went off script for a moment. And that's the famous clip we've all heard.
So Chris's theory with timeline insertions is really riffing off of that kind of simulation theory that Philip K. Dick started with, taking it a little step further and saying, there could be such a thing as a hairball of timelines. And here's what we would notice when that happens. And I think that's where your theory really explodes, Chris. That's where it really takes off. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I've definitely, the concept of timeline insertions I've heard before, like others have used that phrase. Although Jerry introduced me to a new phrase, time smears. I've never heard of the concept of a time smear, which is interesting.
It's something that I concepted about a year or so ago when we were talking about time travelers. And if time travel could be an instance, somebody brought up the butterfly effect, which makes sense. The only way I could make it work. But then I got to thinking, well, if a time traveler started in, say, 2022, and he traveled back to 1950, and changed something, and travels to 2021 and travels to 1930, all these different jumps and whatnot, you couldn't be able to tell where the time traveler originated and where he ended. It would look like a smear across time. And that's when I got to thinking, wait a minute, this makes a lot of sense. Time smear, you couldn't, like CERN, for instance, if it's retrocausal, you couldn't tell when the original thing happened because the history of all of it has been changed. It's been smeared across time. This isn't something you can Google and find a concept of yet. Give me time. Don't put it past me. But yeah, time smear, it's a pretty simple concept, but it's something that a lot of people don't consider. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, that was the other thing about CERN. You bring them up again. A bit of venom. This was way back, but he said CERN was created in 1990 or something for me. It's now 1954. Now, I remember them talking about this marvel of a tube that they were creating before it was actually live, when they were talking about how big it was and all the obstacles. And I remember watching some kind of special when they were building it. Now, could it have been from 1954? And I don't think so. It seemed like it was current news. But I wasn't born in 54. So my memories definitely align with you, Bit of Venom, because I remember at some point watching something somewhere and I was like, wow, what's this thing they're creating? And that's how I first heard about it. It was before they even fired it up. It was when they were just creating it. So 1990 would definitely be in the 90s or somewhere in there would definitely fit my memories more. But now
let me play devil's advocate for a minute on this. I've heard this quite a bit. So CERN, the organization, the way I understand it, and at least according to this timeline, the organization has been around for a long time. Now, the Large Hadron Collider itself, created by CERN, didn't come in until, say, the 90s or so when they started building that. So it's like us 10 years from now suddenly creating some kind of machine or creating something. Well, IMEC just came on the scene now for me. Well, we've been around for 10 years, So that could have something to do with it. CERN, the LHC being kind of conflated together as one thing, where they're actually two separate. One is an organization, one is literally a machine. Possibly. I don't know. That's my take on it.
A quick Google of it said It was built in 2008. So that is too recent for me because
But what
that
are
show came out around that time and they were already saying that was causing it. So
what are
none
our
of that makes
thoughts?
sense.
What are our thoughts about timeline insertions in general, though? Getting
Yeah.
back to the theory, this one.
I think it fits a lot of cut and paste as we had on that slide. It seems things are like we see the animals being inserted all the time. Animals we've never heard of, or even Lazarus animals coming back and being inserted. There we go, the cut and paste. That's almost what it seems like to me is a cut and paste job from different timelines into this one. Now, for what purposes, that's yet to be determined, of course. Chris, do you think this has you and Shane were discussing this a moment ago, a monetary purpose behind a lot of these timeline insertions, or do you think it's perhaps, a business or perhaps something?
Bliss-ness.
Blissness.
Yes,
blissness. Yes, blissness. There we go. Is there a blissness reason behind it, or could it be like for instance, CERN gone wrong, an experiment gone wrong, or something to this nature?
Yeah, to me, it's not really about money, because I don't think like whoever is controlling or trying to control the hologram or whatever faction, elites, whatever. I don't think money is really the issue for them, because they can just print as much money as they want. It's like, so like it kind of like, to me, that part of it is not as strong as just being able to manipulate things, to be able to take like timeline insertions. On the counter of that, could there also be timeline events that were removed, like really good things that happened that were removed from history? Like, for example, for a lot of people, there's historical events involving like King Arthur and that whole time period, but there's really nothing in the historical record, hardly anything about the Pendragons you can find. Was that something that the global narrative removed from our history because it did good things and it wasn't supposed to, and it didn't support what they wanted? So I think it goes beyond that, but it's really about control and about dominance and controlling the outcome of things. Like, that's the way I see it.
That's the part that reminds me of Philip K. Dick. That's just that there's this freedom faction, whatever you call them, the people who believe in sovereignty of spirit, free will, free thinking, critical thinking, and then there's some sort of oppressive power structure. That's sort of a good summary of the way it feels. Or do you feel like there are other factions involved?
Feels more like a merger to me, a merging of different aspects rather than a cut and paste sort of man-made event. You know what I mean? It feels like it's done outside of our reality. It seems like it would have to be done outside of our reality. It's kind of like painting a boat that you're inside of, or.
That's a good point. It would actually have to be, you'd have to be able to see things from the outside view to be.
Otherwise, you just confuse yourself.
Yeah.
You get tangled in your hairball of timelines. You would completely get lost inside your own hairball, is what I feel like.
Yeah, it's like trying to map out New York City from just standing in Times Square.
Yeah,
you can't really do it. It's difficult to do something like that. But if you're outside, you can get it all, right?
Yeah. But maybe quantum computers provide information they need. Maybe they have a tool that gets them outside of it. So I don't really, anything could be possible.
What would we be looking for, Chris? That would be validation or verification that this is indeed happening, that sets it apart from the other theories.
I'm not sure. For me, a lot of it is what's called forgotten history. And I'll give you an example, because like you get a Mandela Effect in your book. I've been getting these Mandela effects in my videos as well. Like something that happened for me is in one of my first Symphony of Realities videos, I talked about the worst maritime disaster in United States history, which was the SS Eastland disaster of 1915. And I did careful research, and there's a lot of sites you can go on to see, like, what are the top, maritime disasters with people killed. I did a lot of research, and it was always the SS Eastland. And then it changed to a ferry boat disaster, the Southland or something. It was a ferry boat in 1865 that was carrying Union soldiers that were prisoners of war back to the north, a lot of them were like suffering from starvation, all emaciated, and one of the boilers blew up, and the steamboat caught on fire, and like 1,800 soldiers died. So the SS Eastland had 800, and then this now became the number one. And just 2 days ago, I'm like, let me just go Google worst maritime disasters. Now there's the second biggest one I never heard of before, called the GL Slocum disaster that happened, I think, in the early 1900s, carrying German Americans, and that caught on fire. And there are I think 1,100 people died on that. So now the SS Eastland is like barely in the top 3. So like what's going on with these different things? Like, so to me, it's like when the historical record keeps changing like that, it feels like some kind of a timeline insertion. And why did someone want that boat carrying all these German Americans somewhere around New York Harbor to sink? Like, why? So yeah, so it's really interesting. But the concept for me, I think of like video editing, and you're doing an insertion. You know, you've made a movie, so to speak, and you want the movie to like have a certain feel and flow. So you'll take this. It's not the way I want it. So I want it. So this one faction makes a chess move to do this timeline insertion, and another one makes another one to counter it. Because I think I'm talking about negative ones, but there's positive ones too. There's positive timeline insertions that like add to our reality and make things better or counter a negative.
I was watching one of those videos, and the numbers changed from one time that I'd watched it to the next. I think I commented at the time about that.
Yeah.
So, I hope my comment is still there. I mean, things do change so much.
I know. So people might think, oh, I'm making inaccurate videos, but like, man, I try my best to like make sure it's of the historical record of that time, and then I kind of lock it into time so that you can go back and see the Mandela effect cause of it. Because otherwise, my video would have. Because I would go back and did my video change? And my video still says it's the SS Eastland, which was the #1 maritime disaster.
And I think it's so hard to sort of apply intent to a change because, you know, like I told you about the Tulsa Rice Massacre, that was horrible here, right? But if they covered it up, if it actually happened and they covered it up,
that's worse.
And it's a revelation of truth, then you've got, you know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? You know, at that point, it's like, oh, well, your sins have been exposed, so it appears to be bad, but in essence, the evil people behind it were exposed. So it's so hard to like apply whether it's a good thing or a bad thing or negative or positive timeline insertion if you don't know what the original was for sure, right? Like, so if we don't know that those disasters didn't really happen and somebody who was responsible for it just covered it up and it never, you know, somehow they hid it, and all those soldiers were dishonored in that fact that they hid it, you know, and scrubbed it from history or whatever. So I don't know. It's just hard to apply intent to anything. I think it's almost better if you can sort of, you know, look at all the possibilities about why it might have changed and what it really was before it changed. You know, it's just so hard.
Truly unbiased and on the fence.
But this is definitely a very interesting theory. Chris has worked a lot on. Like I said, if you are interested in having a very, very much longer breakdown and discussion of this theory, do check out the International Mandela Effect Conference YouTube if you haven't already, and go to the 2019 conferences. Chris Anatra's talk in that conference really broke this down into a very deep depth, and it's still very fascinating to me. I like to go back and watch it every now and again myself.
Cool. Yeah, and in my videos, I'm always bringing. So if anyone goes to YouTube and goes to the Quantum Businessman YouTube channel, I'm always bringing this type of stuff up. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to be putting out another video the next day or so that kind of gets into more of this and more interesting Mandela effects that some people may not have heard of before.
Wow, that's awesome.
Look forward to that, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you are subscribed to the Quantum Businessman Chris Anatra's YouTube channel. And I do believe that's pretty much everything we have for today, right, folks?
Except for questions.
Except for questions.
We can also thank our sponsor.
I wasn't sure if this was before or after the question slide, so my apologies. It wasn't in my original deck, so she does a great job, our backstage producer, of making sure all this comes together, apparently better than I do, because I would have really screwed this up. A special thank you to our current and new Patreon sponsors. We have had a couple people drop off, and we've had a couple people added, so our current...
Also, some people request not to be listed, and we are happy for them to be Patreons, and we understand not to put the name on the end sheet, and that's fine. Just let us know.
Absolutely. If you want to remain anonymous, we have no problem with that. JD Peterson, James, just James, Stephen Clay, Colleen Learley, Julia.
Stephanie Clay.
I'm sorry?
Stephanie Clay.
Stephanie Clay. I'm sorry. Apparently my eyes are working about as good as my tongue is today. Colleen Learley, Julia Padreka. I do apologize, by the way, if I screw up you guys' names. I am not the best at some of these. Jody, Jason Ram, Josiah Bericius. Again, my apologies if I messed that up. Piper Troxler, Paul Ellis, Michelle Walker, Bo Kim, Lee Birch, Holly, and of course those that have requested to remain anonymous. We thank every one of you guys for your sponsorship, for your continued Patreon sponsorship to us. It really means a lot to us. We do have some very special information over there that you will not find on any other platform, only on Patreon, some exclusive content. So do make sure you go over there. We're always looking for new exclusive content to put on the Patreon. Matter of fact, I've got a couple suggestions later on. I'll get to the team about some things we can do. But if you are interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, we would really appreciate it. Also, any donations given to IMEC are tax write-off, are tax deductible, as IMEC is a 501c3 organization. So you are literally donating and helping us out. So make sure you keep your receipts if you donate through any means whatsoever. To donate to our Patreon, just go to patreon.com/IMEC, all capital letters. There you go, folks. We are so very, very thankful and appreciative to all of our Patreon supporters. Round of applause for them, guys.
Thank you.
You guys rock. You guys keep us going. You guys really, really, really help us out more than you could ever imagine. Make sure you tell your friends, tell your family, tell your family's friends, and your friends' family. Let them all know where we're at. Also, I believe if you go to imec.world, you can find all the ways to donate to IMEC. We very much appreciate it. There it is on the screen, https://imec.world. imec.world. Do check us out over there, guys. We try to keep that updated as frequently as possible. I will tell you guys, if you're on there on the phone, there is some issues still on the phone. I was on there the other day. I couldn't get the side menu to drop down and stuff. We are working on that in the background. I promise you that much. All right, folks, with that said, thank you again, everybody, for being Patreon subscribers. And if you're not, check into it. We'd very much appreciate that, too. It is time for questions. And the first question, it looks like Red Cap Goblin says, why is there suddenly an attack on Ellis Island? You guys remember this?
An attack on Ellis Island? No.
So it was actually not on Ellis Island. I believe it was on a island very close to that. A depot was blown up by the Germans.
Oh,
and
Black Tom.
Black Tom, yes. Black Tom, yes.
Is that what this question is about?
That is my assumption. That's the only thing I know of an attack on Ellis Island.
So then the question might mean, when reference to timeline insertions, what would the benefit be of having that attack, the Black Tom? Is that what the question means?
That's what I would determine it to mean, yes.
And if that's what it meant too, like it was German terrorists that actually were to blame for the Black Tom Island explosion. Interesting. It's also interesting because 9/11 I thought was supposed to be the first attack on U.S. soil.
Right. That's what I remember.
Yeah. So what?
What it had? Yeah.
Mandela Effect for sure.
Well, on the continent, they said Pearl Harbor had been the first, but now that I guess Pearl Harbor wouldn't be the first either.
If you look into World War II, this is something that Chick, Mandela Effect, myself, and SMQ, for those who remember that channel,
Yes.
I don't think he does that much work anymore. But we were looking into this very, very deeply, and it got to the point that the more that we would look into World War II, the more things would change in World War II. Australia wasn't on the front lines. They were at home fending off attacks back at home. The Black Tom incident, for instance, if you go back and look at these wars, for some reason, the wars themselves have a lot of differentials in them.
It's almost like you're looking into different perspectives or causal agents, which is what fits in with Chris's theory.
Yeah, I want to mention too that Hawaii, where Pearl Harbor is, didn't become a state until 1959. So it was not actually considered like U.S. soil, especially U.S. mainland soil.
Okay.
So
no, it wouldn't be mainland. No.
Yeah. So
it would be equivalent to just our territory, like say Guam or somewhere like that now.
Yeah, I mean
Puerto Rico, I guess it's like that. Right?
It was a takeover of the Kingdom of Hawaii, which is a whole other part of history, which is interesting that the United States did that was not good for the Hawaiian people. But that goes into like another subject about the takeover of the Kingdom of Hawaii. So yeah, but it wasn't the year of Pearl Harbor, it wasn't considered like part of the United States.
Interesting.
Now that I did not know.
Yeah, 1959, right?
I believe. So when we look at one of these attacks to answer that question about Ellis Island, what's the point of it? And this gets to what you said earlier, Shane. We can't really know. We don't know.
I mean, I can just pull one off the top of my head. Say they didn't want people in the torch anymore because at some point somebody got up in the torch, got a long range something and did something from there. I mean, that's just one thing I can just pull out. You know what I'm saying? And then they stopped that event by, doing this one thing before that. Now that guy can't get to the tower. He can no longer have the vantage point he had before. I mean, that's just one little scenario. It could be millions of things.
It's funny you bring up the torch because the Black Tom Island, that the shrapnel hit the torch.
Right. That's why people can't go up in there now, right? It's from that attack, right? So where people remember being in the torch before.
And isn't the torch like the sign of liberty? Like it was almost like a negative thing against the United States. Like, it was almost like a hole in one. Like they hit the torch. And that was like the sign of liberty for the United States.
Yeah.
The flame of freedom.
Plasma. That's the plasma part of the statue again. So there's all this deeper meaning, right? Because fire is plasma, right?
And it was golden.
Wow. So I mean,
now,
any of the stuff is like that. The more you pick it apart, the deeper you go. It's all rabbit holes.
Yeah.
So Black Tom could have had a timeline insertion reason, if you will, in a way to turn the tide of war in the future or whatever the case may be. Apparently it failed, thank goodness. We need to quit looking into some of that stuff. We might lose the war for ourselves, right?
It literally destroyed, I think it was in today's dollars, $100 million worth of ammunition and weaponry from the United States. So it was towards the end of World War I, but it drastically weakened it. So when I was reading into it, I was reading that the Nazis were involved, that had time travel, that were doing something to weaken the United States, especially related to World War II, which would happen later. So it gets very intriguing because we know all these things that happen on the surface, and then when you start to investigate what happened behind the scenes, it's like, wow, the real stories come out about what's going on.
Right. In the sake of time, I do hate to cut you guys off, but let's move on to the next question as we're pushing 3 hours now, guys. It's getting a little long. Question, did you guys hear about the quantum chip bringing 9,000 years of computations down to microseconds? This is from Wasted Millennium. What is your thoughts on this? Technology, reality will never be the same, for the better, perhaps? Personally, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this either.
I just heard of it yesterday. I have to look into this. I just heard of it.
Yeah, it's brand new to me. This is the first I've heard of it.
So, Wasted Millennium, thank you for the question. Thank you for the information. We will do our due diligent research and we will tackle this, I'm sure, on another episode. I have got to go ahead and copy and paste this into my note file here real quick so that I also can look into this. I've never heard of this before at all. Fascinating. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And Gainer, next question, says, what if we're separating into levels of consciousness? Be the person you want to be around in the next level.
Absolutely.
What do you guys think?
Oh, for sure. You know, this is like when Chris talks about upgrades from the sun right now, we're all able to receive those. And when you listen to Shane's music and you get into that fractal groove, you're able to level up. Meditation helps. So, and then just through that intention, I like to ask, how good can it get or how good can I get? And that's a way of selectively intending that you're going to be raising that level of consciousness. So it starts getting you out of egotism or egoism, and it's a good path.
Yeah, and to stay out of the fear frequency, because it seems like there's like fear being projected on us no matter where you look. Like that's why people can't even look at the news anymore. It's almost ridiculousness as far as like how much fear could they keep imposing on the people over and over again. So that's a frequency you want to get out of your reality as much as possible, and then focus on the positive as much as you can, so that you can raise up and get to that higher timeline, which we're all trying to get to.
It's already here. It's here.
Yeah.
I think this is a fascinating idea. I had never considered the concept to such a degree of separating into levels of consciousness. Those on one level able to see the Mandela, opposed to those on another which are not, which would explain those that cannot see it at all. Different consciousness level altogether. That's interesting. Very interesting. I love the fact that our audience is so smart. They bring up ideas that even I'm like, wow, never even would have thought of. Love it. You guys are amazing. We've got the best audience in the world. I may be a little biased. Have you, says JD Peterson, next question, have you heard the claims about the Chinese AI robots that went crazy and killed 29 scientists? Comments?
I've heard it as a rumor. I haven't seen any. I've tried to figure out if there was any way to corroborate or prove that. I haven't seen it yet. But of course, why would we? If such a thing happens, then it's going to get covered up by their government. So I've looked into it and couldn't find anything. So
I know this story originates with Linda Moulton Howe.
Okay.
She's the one that brought this to light. Like you said, aside from claims, I have not seen any evidence or proof that this has actually occurred. It's just her claim opposed to anyone else's. So if you trust Linda Moulton Howe, maybe run with the information. If you don't, so be it. Grain of salt. That's all I know about that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Sorry, JD.
Was that recent?
No.
Is it
sort of semi, in the
Like
last
4 years ago?
Yeah, it was like, maybe 4, okay. I was going to say 4 years ago. And it was Linda Moulton Howe, right? There may be a video where she talks about it.
Yes, there is a video. It's a conference or something she's at. She speaks to this.
It's a long thing, hours long.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's in there.
But again, aside from anecdotal pointing, I have no evidence to say one way or the other. Now, the concept that it could, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't trust AI for nothing. You wouldn't put me in a self-driving car. I don't care how good you say they are. I am not getting in anything that I want to trust to drive me down the road. I've made too many enemies in government, though, so that could have an effect on that. Apparently the FBI doesn't like the words that come out of my mouth most of the time. Speaking of coming out of mouth, next question, Atsuko Ushida. Matter of fact, I appreciate Atsuko. He created, or they created.
Atsuko Uchida. Uchida, right. Yeah, Atsuko.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. They created the original Dark Wolf's Den picture, that black wolf that I used to have that had all the different, they created that. They won the contest I ran. So yeah, they've been around the community
an excellent artist, makes jewelry and everything. She's wonderful.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent artist indeed, and has been around the community for quite a while. Question RE timeline. When you shift to different timelines, do you think the previous timeline you were on continues to exist or would cease to exist? Now that's a good question.
Well, when we see flip-flops, we're getting that experience of going back and forth, and I've had some where I've gone back and forth and back. It's like flip-flop, like a windshield wiper. And so clearly, if you can keep doing that, then in some form, the timelines are there. So would it cease to exist? Our experience of it ceases to exist. So who we are is a big part of the equation. Our identity.
Tree in the forest sort of thing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what Cynthia is saying. Like for us in our bubble of reality, it would cease to exist because we're not on that timeline anymore. So and
just a wave of potential from our perspective, right?
A potential?
A wave of potential,
like
he said.
Quantum, you know how things go from waves and then the
wave particle duality.
It's a wave form function. Yeah.
Right.
So the wave functions are smeared out. They're just smeared across all possibility, all probability. And the particle is where you make the observation and the wave function collapses. So
I guess a better question for Atsuko anyway would be, is there conscious observers around on a reality that we feel like we left anyway?
So let me play again the devil's advocate here. I'm finding I'm doing that a lot lately. I don't know why, just kind of a thing I've been doing. When you suggest, as we did earlier, that in the quantum telepathy experiment, that reality doesn't exist unless you observe it, you being you, then it would suggest that timeline no longer exists because you're not observing it. So at least from your bubble, like you said, it would not exist. It's not in observation. It's quantumly gone.
Yes, and then there are levels of ourselves where we can reincorporate all those possible lifetimes and bring them back together. As we level up, then it's like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Is it really like that though? So it could really be that simple, right? We just move because that's kind of what it is when you set your intentions on something. They say that you need to feel it, experience it, and then watch reality follow. But it's almost like we are moving our consciousness somewhere else and observing the reality we want and bringing it into manifestation, right?
Yeah, I prefer to go into nothingness personally because that's, because then I can guarantee that my direction will be guided by a higher level of self.
That makes sense, yeah. Awesome.
That's a real Zen question here.
Yeah, it is. Thanks for the question. That's good.
Amazing question. Very, very good question. I very much appreciate that. That's the kind of stuff I think about. Like when it comes to timelines and stuff, well, what exists on a timeline? If I jump timelines, where was the one that was there before me? Was there one before me? What happened to the one that I left? It's a whole lot. I like to think deep about that stuff, and I give myself a headache 9 times out of 10. JD Peterson with the next question, and I believe the last question of the day, to the best of my knowledge. I like this question here. It says, any comments on the Georgia Guidestones going boom, boom? Now, remember, we have to be very easy treading on our answer here. We are on fluff tubes. So
really?
So there's
a conspiracy.
We'll let him go last, so just in case we get kicked, right? When it comes to this question, I only have one thing to say. Woohoo! Well done. I think it's amazing. I'm glad to see such an artifact of that type be taken off of this plane of existence. I think it's a good thing, in my opinion. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Cynthia?
Well, it's we didn't explain what this Georgia Guidestone is, and I'd looked into it a little bit previously, but of course it got a lot of news media broadcast with the partial destruction, and then they quickly tore the whole thing down, kind of interestingly. So I don't know who originally put it up there. I don't know that anybody knows exactly. But
R.C. Christian.
But people say that was just a pseudonym. And anyway, and then the wording on the Guidestones seemed very sinister, actually, to me. I don't know how other people felt about it. So it was basically prescriptions for kind of like a collapsed worldview. So instead of thinking of how good can it get golden timeline, it seemed like it was describing something very autocratic, very controlled. Although it didn't say that, it was basically saying population shall be only such and so forth. So when I heard that it had been bombed, I could understand why. We're in a pandemic. People, when I questioned, like, who's the conscious agent? What created this? You've got your human conscious agent, and then there's an underlying consciousness where there's a groundswelling of agitation, fear, and feeling like, who's telling us that we can't be around at this very time when it looks like the population is collapsing. So that was a pretty devastating combination for these guide stones. Looks like they weren't destined to be around long when they're calling for a disaster, it seems like. And it looks like we're in one. So it was it felt to me almost predestined. Like this was a accident waiting to happen based on what it was.
Nobody finds it fishy. They didn't investigate it. Okay,
I was
so
just
the
about
thing
to
went
bring that
off,
up. Yes.
And then before the sun went down, the next time they finished the job. It's
all the evidence destroyed.
I mean, in that sort of instance, so much gets sent out in every direction that you would think they put up the yellow tape and take some time combing through stuff. And there's just no way that they had time to do any of that before they had the backhoes out there finishing the job. So to me, I don't really know what I think about it. I don't really dig what was written on them. I certainly don't support going and blowing stuff up in any kind of way. But at the same time, it seems really fishy. You got all these cameras and the angles they got, the times on the clock when things happen. Things are a little fishy, in my opinion. So I don't really know.
At least the cameras were working this time. Anyway,
right.
I'm with you, though. They destroyed it instantly. They didn't do an investigation. It was almost like they were ready to have them taken down anyway, and they just needed an excuse, a reason to make them go bye-bye. My opinion only, just my opinion. Chris, what do you think about this?
Yeah, it reminds me of 9/11, right? When the buildings came down, the first thing they needed to do is remove everything. Like all evidence must be removed and everything.
Where'd they send it? China,
right? Crime scene, right? So
yeah.
that same type of thing. And there was a video, I think it was released in July 7th or 9th, of showing a figure going to the guides. It looks almost like Bigfoot. And why don't they have good surveillance cameras? It's just like a black object, like Sasquatch, running behind the fence, running up to the guide stones, and then running away. So they're saying that's when the bomb was planted. It's really interesting.
Hilarious.
I looked at the conspiracy. It was Bigfoot that did it. Here's the conspiracy angle to it. Guess what's exactly 666 miles away from the Georgia Guidestones?
UN.
What's that?
The UN. Yes, sir. The UN.
The UN is not. There's another thing that's exactly 666. The obelisk in New York, which is Cleopatra's Needle, which is one of three things that was taken from Egypt. One went to New York. One went to London in the financial district, and the other one is placed in Paris. So 666 miles from the Georgia Guidestones is this obelisk in New York that I actually went to a couple of times this year. One of the times I went to was on the lunar eclipse. I think it was in March. We went there with a group of people. So could the Guidestones have been suppressing that obelisk that was placed on a place of power? It's behind one of the New York museums. It gets very intriguing about, what are the different causes and, what effect might that have on New York, which, we all need help all over the planet, but New York definitely needs a little more magic going on. So, yeah. So from the conspiracy point of view, I'll just point out that part of it. Could have been Sasquatch, and the obelisk in New York could have been involved. So I'll just end it there.
I thought I was a conspiracy theorist, but cheers to you, my friend. You make me look like an amateur.
Cheers. Very good.
Well done, Chris. I said that was the last question. I lied. One more. I know there's two more questions in chat. I don't think we're going to be able to get to bit of Venoms, unfortunately. We will catch you next time around. Luisa Diaz says, have any of you experienced personal physical MEs, i.e.,
Yes.
birthmarks moving, disappearing, reappearing, things like that? Chris, you jumped out real quick. What you got, Bob?
Oh my God, I had a big one like a couple months ago because I have a tattoo on a certain part of my body. It was always on the right part of my body. I woke up one morning, I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm like, what the heck? It moved to the left part of my. I'm like, what is going on? And it's like, and I went back and looked at pictures of me where I didn't have a shirt on, and it's like, yep, it's all the way it is now. But it's like, that's not how I remember it. It actually moved. So yeah, so I've experienced things like that with a tattoo.
Did you notice anything accompanying that, Chris? Like your reasoning for putting it on the left opposed to the right, that suddenly you remembered why you put it?
Yeah, exactly. Because I have another like smaller tattoo on my arm, on my right arm, and I wanted to have tattoos just on the right side of my body. I don't know why I had that in my mind. I didn't want to be balanced with the tattoos, like one on the left and one on the right. I wanted to have them both on the right. And then when the other one appeared on the left, and what's funny too is like I have like a mole mark over here too that was on my right side that jumped over to the left.
Wow.
So really weird.
I can tell you this is not the first anecdote I've heard of tattoos being bouncy. Or even birthmarks jumping to different locations. This is there's been a number that I have recorded over the years from community members who have said pretty well the exact same thing. Cynthia, any experiences with you and Mandela Effect personal physical MEs?
Nothing striking of that nature, so not yet, but who knows? It's always possible.
Shane, yourself?
Absolutely. I had a deformed rib cage and it went back to being perfect and symmetrical with the other side. And now it's not like it originally was, but there's another dip just closer to the middle that, might be part of the first one. It's almost like an in-between of both realities. So yeah, I've had the rib thing is definitely a big one for me.
So the only ones that I've experienced are the kidneys in the wrong place, the heart in the wrong place, the liver a little bit bigger, the lungs a little bit different. Besides the normal Mandela Effect body changes.
Yeah. And there's one that I put in my book, Reality Shifts, where my hair changed. It got wavy, and it used to be just plain straight. So that did happen. Wow. But that happened so long ago, I don't even think of it. It's been decades now.
Wow.
But that should qualify. Definitely.
Now, all my bruises, scars, and birthmarks, I haven't seen do any jumping. Now, I do have a heart. I know you guys have seen this in Ketchum, a heart birthmark on my arm. It is wider than the skin around it. It always, even when it tans, it doesn't tan. It glows. It has no melanin in it whatsoever. So when I tan, it actually shines this little bitty heart birthmark on my arm, which I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but it's there. You can see the lighter spot there.
Yeah. That's wild. I got one that I just found. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that hasn't moved. It's been in the same spot forever. I don't know of any scars or anything on myself that have been bouncy or jumpy.
Right. Real quick, one of my clients, Craig, told me about this one. I didn't know, but do you remember the little white sections at your fingernails right here?
Yes.
Like a half circle? They're gone. You might have a little bit on your thumb, but none on your fingers. That freaked me out. I'm like, what?
Dude, you just got me too, because I looked at my thumb and went, no, it is. Oh, the thumb might have a little bit. Okay, well.
Yeah, all I've got left is the thumb. So that definitely has changed.
That's changed. You guys didn't know about that one either?
No.
I did not. I've got a little bit on one of my
about
fingers.
It, so.
Wow.
So we probably got a bunch of people freaking out looking at their fingers
right now. Go, holy crap!
I had to do a session
man.
after that. I'm like, sorry, I'm looking at my fingers. They don't even look right. And like, it's one of those things. How long did we not notice? You know what I mean?
Have you ever looked at your hand, man?
Thank you, JD Peterson. You all are very entertaining today. Laugh out loud. We're just happy to be back together. Look, we've gone 3 hours. That's like double the time we wanted to. We just needed this time together to regroup and build that laughter and energy. And we're so glad you guys could join us. It's beautiful.
Let me tell you,
we've got a date for next month set. So it'll be Wednesday. It'll be August 24th. Same time.
That was my next question.
Yeah, mark your calendars, guys.
August 24th, 2022, folks. IMEC Open Tables will be back with an all new episode. So do make sure that you, like Shane said, mark your calendars, set the date, set your reminders, do everything you got to do to make sure you join us. In the meantime, do please share out this information everywhere and anywhere. Put us on all the social medias. That's what we want. Put us on Truth Social, put us on Facebook, put us on any of those social media sites that you frequent. We're even over on Twitter, believe it or not. I personally won't be found on Twitter, but IMEC definitely is. So definitely share us out. Let everybody know we're here. Let everybody know the Mandela Effect is real, especially this episode. We've shown a lot of scientific, rigorous data that proves we are more correct than incorrect. That proves the Mandela Effect is real, and the psychologists are taking a bit of a backseat on this one, a bit of a butt kicking on this one, which I gotta say I'm not opposed to liking, right? But do make sure you come back August 24th.
Yes.
I almost said 25th. See? August 24th, 2022 for Mandela Effect or IMEC International Mandela Effect Conference Open Tables. I will get my words out eventually, I promise. I will let you guys know a little behind the scenes information. I'm not sure the team wants me to say this, but I'm going to anyway. Sorry, guys. We are working, folks, on pulling together a real in-person live Mandela Effect conference. It is only in the works right now. It is in talks. There's nothing set in stone yet, but we are working on getting together again in person live for another conference together, just like we had in Ketchum. It won't be in Ketchum, Idaho this time. It will be in another location around the country. But definitely stay tuned for more information on that as details emerge through time. With that said, folks, anything anybody would like to add before we cut this off, ladies and gentlemen?
Nominate and vote for your IMEC.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a vote you can participate in. And also that, think of that article, that Vice article, as an excellent tool for your friends and family that might not think it's happening. It's a little more what they probably consider official, mainstream, closer anyway. And I think they did a really good job with providing scientific research and honest, unbiased coverage from all sides of the issue. So think of it as an excellent tool you can just send to someone that maybe haven't been receptive to you talking about the Mandela Effect before. So, and thank you to Vice for putting out such a shareable article.
Top hats off to Vice on that one, 100%. I am really, really impressed with that. If I could have Heather backstage go ahead and drop that Survey Monkey link on screen here for us, so you guys can copy this down if you'd like to. I think it's also in our description, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it's in the description. Yeah.
Go to Survey Monkey, use our link. Please, 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 please vote. This is the year of the vote, whether you're into politics or whatever the case may be. Come on over, give us a vote. Well, not us. Give a vote to the Golden Mandy and nominate this is a nomination round right now. Nominate what you think the biggest M.E. is, what you think, or who you think the person that has really moved the conversation forward in the last year in the community is. We want to know. You guys decide. And then after this round, we'll go into the selections that have been made and another round of voting. And we will continue this process until we get it down to a winner. The community vote, the community suggestion, you guys are in charge of all of this. All we're doing is putting the information back to you guys, just telling you what you chose. So please do go over there, cast your votes for the Golden Mandy. This is something we're very, very excited about here at IMEC, something that'll be the second year in a row we've done it. Very, very important. There we go. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. The polls are open. Time to vote. Cast your vote online at Survey Monkey Space. Again, the first question you will fill in: what Mandela Effect this past year shocked you the most? The next question is again a fill it in. The Golden Mandy Award is a Mandela Effect version of the Oscars at the Academy Awards. Who would you nominate for the 2022 and why? Now, as a quick side note, the 2021 nominees were Shazam movie by DC Comics, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Holmes and Watson released in 2018, Pinocchio released December 2000, and Brie Benage's TEDx Youth Talk, The Mystery Behind the Mandela Effect. And Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was also nominated. The winner, of course, became Brie Benage, the teenager who gave an incredible TEDx talk. If you have not heard it, definitely I would suggest also going back and listening to that. But you guys get to decide who wins the next round. You guys choose the nominees. You guys choose the winners. You guys are in charge of all of it. Like I said, all we're going to do is feedback to you the information that you've given us. Added the link to chat, so it is clickable, you guys. If you're in the chat over here, even on the replay, click that link, go on over, take the Survey Monkey survey, and let us know what you think. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an honor and a pleasure to join all of you on this amazing episode.
Did Chris want to say something? Yeah, I think
Chris?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. So you're saving it for last.
It is an honor and a pleasure to have every last one of you guys here. Again, I'm going to give you guys one more round in case anything you want to throw out there before I close it. I'm going to close it out.
Yep. Yay.
Move it up.
Love you guys.
All right.
How good can it get?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Cynthia Sue Larson, Christopher Anatra, Shane Robinson, Unbiased Non-Defense, myself, Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, we are the board members of the International Mandela Effect Conference, IMEC Open Tables. We thank you for watching, and remember, together we go, together we grow.
We grow.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.